Chapter 442. Super Aristocratic Family? Jun Wui was speechless. His thoughts hadn't changed yet. Just like that, they became a super aristocratic family? They were still the same people. Not a single one of them had changed, and yet, they had become super? Jun Moxie Lengling smiled and continued, moreover, the royal family. I only lack the so-called real evidence. If I had the evidence, then it wouldn't be impossible for me to turn the entire Tianxiang city into a pile of ruins in an instant. The third uncle, the Silver Blizzard Cities, Xiao Buyu said that he had gone to the Blood Sword Hall. Even if it was the Blood Sword Hall, they were just an assassin organization. How could they have the ability to freely enter and exit an army of 1,000,000 soldiers, and that pass token? Third uncle, don't tell me you haven't thought about it? What does it all mean, and what is connected to it? Now that things have come to this, if we have too many misgivings, we'll only be at a disadvantage. After all, in comparison, we are still at a certain disadvantage. So we must be strong at this time. Absolute power. Only then can we prove that we have a real backing behind us. Everyone was afraid to act rashly for fear of harming innocent bystanders. This period of time is our time. What we lack now is time. Even one day is enough to change everything. Jun Moxie's face turned solemn as he thought about the elixirs he had collected and the level 9 Xiandan, the Xiandan. Everyone was ready, the herbs were ready, and Solitary Eagle was here. With the protection of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, Grandfather's advancement was unstoppable. Then, he would think of a way to promote Jun Wui to Xinxian, and the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer teams under him would be promoted once more. Then, he would add in Bailey Luoyun and Hai Chen Feng's forces. At that time, they could barely be considered a super aristocratic family. And now, although they boasted of being a super aristocratic family, they were only an empty shell. So, at this juncture, they absolutely could not make any mistakes. Jun Wui's face convulsed painfully. What Jun Moxie said was exactly the thing that he had been suppressing for 10 years. It was something that he had been extremely suspicious about. She was also his other demon. How could Jun Wui not have suspected it? However, he really didn't want to believe that the Tianxiang that his family had sacrificed everything for would treat him like this. This was not cowardice, but human nature. After all, the Jun family had bathed in blood on the battlefield to get to Tianxiang. If he believed this cruel truth, it would be the same as destroying everything he had built with all his effort. To anyone, this was an unbearable burden in their life. However, don't act rashly before you have concrete evidence. Jun Wui lowered his voice. You can say that to me, but don't mention it to your grandfather unless you have solid evidence. His temper, of course. Jun Moxie smiled and said meaningfully, Third uncle, you're not stupid. I'm not stupid either. Grandpa is not stupid either. Haha, you should rest assured that our emperor is not stupid either. Jun Wui heaved a long sigh. He didn't say anything and slowly retreated. Jun Moxie's eyes regained their ice-cold expression. He brandished his horsewhip and 3 bang, bang sounds were heard. The 3 scholars were hit by the whip and their bodies twitched. However, they didn't dare to shout. Jun Moxie's gloomy tone was filled with murderous intention as he said in a heavy tone, Shout for me. The 3 scholars scrambled to shout under the unprecedented murderous aura, I'm Han Zhidong, Yen Feng, Qin Qiushi from the Wenxing Institute. The third young master Jun is great. He's noble. He's the best. We welcome the third young master Jun back to Tianxiang. Mei Gao Jie is an old turtle. Kong Ling Yang is an old tortoise. And the Meng family is a nest of turtles. It was strange to say that the 3 scholars' curses had become smoother and smoother as soon as they had spoken those first words. Moreover, they had become more and more fluent in their curses. They had started to curse at all sorts of vicious and despicable things. However, this was because they had lost all sense of honor and shame after they had spoken those first words. So, they had started to pour out their curses in an unceasing and fluent manner. June Moxie was like a brothel keeper who had succeeded in forcing an innocent woman to become a prostitute. He was gritting his teeth as he laughed heartily. He was immensely proud of himself as he spurred his horse forward. The bystanders looked at him as if they were looking at a visitor from hell. Thousands of people's eyeballs froze at this moment. The Tianxiang city was in complete chaos. June Moxie's entrance into the city was like an unprecedented violent storm, and it had engulfed the entire Tianxiang city in a split second. All the aristocratic families had started to move the moment June Moxie had entered the city. Countless letters of impeachment had been sent to the imperial palace like snowflakes. Several old men had even entered the imperial palace in palanquins. The Dugu family was watching the show. The Li family didn't make any movements. The Tang family was also silent. The Murong family had sent a few people to inquire about the situation. Then, they had disappeared without a trace. Grandpa June was sitting calmly on the fishing platform. He had proudly ordered the kitchen to prepare the best dishes and wine. His son and grandson had returned. So, he was prepared to drink to his heart's content. As for the matters outside, he had his son and grandson. So, why would he still need his father's help? It had to be said that Emo Xie's way of doing things was extremely daring. However, this was also the best way to deal with the situation. Since he was already standing against the world, then he might as well be arrogant to the end. The June family's ancestral precept: he who has a bird under his crotch must be a man. He who has an indomitable spirit must go to hell. Not bad, not bad. This time, I will go to hell. I will do whatever I want. He he he. The old man took a sip of wine and laughed happily. Emo Xie's actions had created a strong deterrent force. Moreover, the solitary falcon was one of the 8 great masters, and Emo Xie had fought against 4 spirit Xian experts by himself. Moreover, the June family was backed by a mysterious expert who was considered to be the world's #1 expert. The June family's reputation as a super family had been thoroughly solidified. So, how could they possibly run away from it? The June family could finally hold its head up high. As for the mess in the imperial court, they could join forces with the Murong family and the Dugu family to suppress those poor people. That way, they wouldn't be able to make any noise. They could even be ignored. I am in a good mood now. If I was in a bad mood, I would have exterminated them. Grandpa June had completely forgotten how anxious he had been a few days ago. His face was as calm as Mount Tai. As for His Majesty's face, cough cough. I don't want to think about it. In any case, the Empire doesn't have the ability to deal with the June family. Innocent people are innocent. The Song family and the other families were like ants on a hot pan. They were in a mess. The Meng family was even more unbearable. They were like a bald dog whose tail had been cut off. They were desperately sending memorials to the imperial palace. Then, they would run to the Li family again and again. They were vainly trying to grasp that non-existent straw of hope. However, they couldn't find anyone. The Meng family's lord, Meng Yue, had returned from the Li family dejectedly when he heard the 3 great scholars cursing Mei Gao Jie, Kong Lingyang, and the Meng family. He had asked to see them several times in a row, but to no avail. So, he had been left in a daze for a long time. Old Master Mei Gao Jie had been waiting for the good news at home. However, he had fainted in anger when he had heard his proud disciple cursing him in the streets. The aristocratic hall's Fatty Tang had received the news that the young Master June had entered the city. And he had jumped up like a rubber ball. He had wanted to go out and greet the young master. But Hai Chen Feng and Song Shang had firmly held him back. The reason for this was very simple. June Mo Xie had solemnly instructed that Tang Yuan shouldn't get involved in the storm that would ensue after his return. Other people might not dare to touch the June family. But that didn't mean that they wouldn't dare to touch the Tang family. After all, the Tang family was the weakest of the Tianxiang's families. Moreover, Fatty and Jun Moxie were very close friends. But the Tang family's lord, Old Master Tang, was a diehard supporter of the Tianxiang imperial family. So, it was better not to make things difficult for his brothers. So, Jun Moxie had to shoulder the responsibility for this matter. Alone in Tianxiang, Jun Moxie finally arrived at the Jun family's residence. He dismounted from his horse and walked up the doorstep. He was about to enter the residence when he suddenly turned around and gave his last order: "Go! Smash all the Meng family's properties in Tianxiang City. Whether they are in the open or in the dark, I want them all smashed. Ah, not good. I'll let Hai Chen Feng take over all of them. Just beat them up once. Keep an eye on the person in charge, and make sure that he's clean. If the Meng family isn't satisfied, tell them that I, Jun Moxie, said that they would take some interest first. And we'll settle the accounts later." 50 or 60 members of the Heaven Destroyer team complied in unison. They then rushed out. "Take over all the Meng family's properties? And it's only a little interest? We'll settle the accounts later." Jun Wui rolled his eyes. He felt that he couldn't see through this nephew of his anymore. The emperor was frowning in the imperial palace. Mr. One was sitting opposite him. The two of them used to talk while playing chess. But the emperor wasn't in the mood to play chess and discuss the world at this time. He was deeply worried. The emperor's face revealed a trace of bitterness and helplessness as he looked at the mountain of memorials placed beside him. The contents of the memorials were almost the same. Request for the punishment of Jun Moxie. Request for the punishment of Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie is lawless and out of control. He has no respect for the emperor. He has caused chaos in the capital and shamed the world. He should be sentenced to death. Your Majesty, please make a decision. Request for the emperor to make a decision quickly. If this goes on, the country will no longer be a country. Request for the emperor to make a decision quickly. The emperor heaved a long sigh. Make a decision. I also want to make a decision. No one is more eager than me to get rid of Jun Moxie. But aren't you thinking too highly of me? A person should have some self-awareness, right? Jun Zhantian's strength was quite strong. But he was only at the peak of Tianxian. He couldn't advance any further. And that's because the Blizzard Silver City wouldn't be able to tolerate his progress. Jun Zhantian may have other military forces. But I still have a way to take drastic measures. That day, I punished Jun Wui and Jun Moxie for an expedition to the southern Heaven City. That was the first step in destroying the Jun family. But the affairs of the world are like a game of chess. Every step is filled with trepidation. It's difficult for everything to go according to one's wishes. Not only did Jun Wui and his nephew not suffer any harm during the expedition to the southern Heaven City, but they also enjoyed the limelight. Moreover, Jun Moxie was able to single-handedly defeat 4 Shenxians. What kind of strength was required to achieve such a feat? This is simply unimaginable. Chapter 443. Second update. Then now, you want me to make a decision? The situation is out of my control. How can I make a decision? How can I dare to make a decision? Your Majesty, you seem to have a lot on your mind? Mr. One had just returned from outside. He had witnessed Jun Moxie's massacre. He leisurely raised his head and looked at the Emperor with wise and far-sighted eyes. Then, he smiled and said, "Is it because of that, Jun Moxie?" "Yes." The Emperor faintly sighed. He strolled to the window and looked at the sunset outside. He remained motionless for a long time. Your Majesty doesn't need to be so worried. In fact, this may not be a bad thing in the long run. Mr. One remained silent for a while. Then, he said, the Jun family is powerful. But it can be said that their influence is too great. In fact, it has already exceeded a certain scope. In fact, it is no longer a threat to the imperial family. Exceeded a certain scope? No threat? The emperor frowned. What do you mean? That's right. The Jun family would have become as deeply rooted as the Murong family if they had gradually developed. Then, they would have been able to overturn the heavens. In fact, it wouldn't have been difficult for them to change dynasties. But the Jun family's power has grown too quickly. They've become one of the most powerful families in the world in a short span of 3 or 4 months. Hee hee. Your Majesty, do you know where these families have been since ancient times? Mr. Wen smiled leisurely. These families have a very special place. They don't have much interest in the so-called imperial throne or imperial power. I'm sure that the Jun family will slowly fade away from the imperial court after a period of stability. They will stroll among the clouds and observe the vicissitudes of life. This has been the rule since ancient times. And all the families are the same. There are no exceptions. That's because these families don't pursue a brief period of splendor. Instead, they pursue a long history that will last for thousands of generations. They laugh at the freedom of the wind and clouds, and they secretly control the universe. Therefore, Your Majesty only needs to choose to be patient for the time being. When this nouveau riche super-aristocratic family has shown off its might and is tired of showing off, they will naturally find their own place. Within the borders of the Tianxiang Empire, the emergence of such a super-family was a great deterrent to the surrounding countries. This time, the reason why Jun Moxie's affair with Uncle Ling and his sister-in-law had caused such a huge reaction was not only because of the Jun family's old enemies, but also because the various countries felt threatened and took the opportunity to make a fuss. Even if they didn't get rid of the Jun family, they still had to make the Tianxiang imperial family and the Jun family hostile. Otherwise, he chuckled softly, even if Uncle Ling's sister-in-law is morally corrupt, how could it cause such a big incident? Does that fellow Jun Moxie have a good reputation in the past? Your Majesty has always been wise and far-sighted. So, how could you think of the worst possible outcome? Jun Moxie may be unruly, but that old man Jun Zhantian and Jun Wui will certainly accept Your Majesty's goodwill. How could I not know what you're saying? The Emperor stood with his hands behind his back. His complexion was bleak, but that's not the problem. The biggest problem lies in the Blood Sword Hall. The Blood Sword Hall? I remember that Your Majesty had mentioned that the Blood Sword Hall is one of the secret forces in Your Majesty's hands. So, I can roughly guess the truth of this matter with Xiao Buyu's confession. And that is the death of Jun Wu Hui and Jun Wu Meng. But the Jun family doesn't have any concrete evidence at the moment. Jun Zhantian and Jun Wui still have the final say in the Jun family. But both of them have deep feelings for the Tianxiang Empire. They are very sentimental. Mr. Wen smiled. Your Majesty, it's hard to leave a warm land. Jun Moxie doesn't care. But Jun Zhantian can't ignore it. So, there's still room for mediation. Room for mediation. Room for mediation. The Emperor's eyes lit up. That's right. That incident happened a long time ago. Your Majesty hasn't revealed anything. But how could Jun Zhantian and Jun Wui not have any suspicions? You must know that the Blood Sword Hall is only an assassin organization, no matter how strong they are. How could they control the army? But Jun Zhantian and his son have been suspicious for 10 years. But they haven't made a move. They haven't even sought revenge. Does Your Majesty know why? Mr. Wen's expression was calm and confident. Why? I don't think that the Jun family doesn't suspect Your Majesty. It's because their entire family has done too much for the Tianxiang Empire, whether they're alive or dead. And that's why they've done too much. Mr. Wen continued in a serious manner. The Jun family has always been the mainstay of the Tianxiang Empire for decades. They've saved the Tianxiang Empire. They've made the greatest contribution to the Tianxiang Empire's construction. The Tianxiang Empire has a radius of tens of thousands of miles. and there are millions of people living there. But the Jun family's blood, tears, and sweat have contributed to the peace and happiness of the Tianxiang Empire. In fact, the Jun family's generations of painstaking efforts have made this situation possible. Mr. Wen smiled in a carefree manner. Your Majesty, put yourself in their shoes. You've done so much for the Empire. You've sacrificed 2 generations of painstaking efforts. But, would you really have the heart to destroy everything with your own hands? Would you destroy your greatest achievement? Would you destroy the peace and happiness of millions of people? That's right. The Jun family has always prided themselves on being a benevolent family. So, they wouldn't do such a thing. The Emperor's eyes flashed. His mind had broadened as he walked back and forth in excitement. However, there are some things that need to be explained. Your Majesty, I'll give you another word. Mr. Wen smiled mysteriously. Then, he pointed his palm downwards and said, Abandon! Abandon? The Emperor's body shook. His joyful expression hadn't yet faded when he said in a daze, Abandon? His heart was filled with bitterness. Those are my most elite forces. They have made countless contributions to the Empire over the years. Those people are desperate for the Emperor's throne. The Juyi family and the Jun family, these people have undoubtedly made great contributions. Moreover, they are my loyal subordinates. Do I really have to abandon them? Yes, abandon. We can't abandon them. We have no choice but to abandon them. Mr. Wen replied without any hesitation. We must confront the Jun family if we don't abandon the Blood Sword Hall. But, can the Jun family confront them? Can they dare to confront them? But, the Emperor's throne may be secondary if the situation worsens. Your Majesty's life and the safety of the entire Tianxiang imperial family. The Emperor's face turned gloomy. His body suddenly swayed. Abandoning the Blood Sword Hall isn't for Jun Zhantian. Nor is it for Jun Wui. But it's for Jun Moxie. Mr. Wen sighed and continued. Jun Zhantian and Jun Wui have devoted their entire lives for the sake of Tianxiang. So, there's no need to doubt their feelings for Tianxiang. But, these 2 men won't go too far even if they're aware that Jun Wuhui and the others are part of His Majesty's plan. But, I'm sure that they won't go too far even if they know that Jun Wuhui and the others are part of His Majesty's plan. Jun Zhantian's entire life and Jun Wui's half of his life have all been for the sake of Tianxiang. In fact, Jun Wuhui's life, Jun Wu Meng's life, and the other 2 Jun brats' deaths have all been for the sake of Tianxiang. Tianxiang is the Jun family's spiritual pillar. It's their life's blood and sweat. And it's their greatest consolation. I'm sure that Jun Zhantian would have found out about this even if he had solid evidence. His Majesty would have only needed to wantonly reward them. Then, he would have apologized. Then, he would have sworn an oath that he would never betray them. And I'm sure that they would have pinched their noses and accepted it. But, they wouldn't have done it for the sake of the country's people. Your Majesty, I can't be wrong. Jun Zhantian and Jun Wui are good men for the sake of the country and its people. They're courageous men who treat each other with sincerity. Therefore, the 2 of them can be ignored. But Jun Moxie is different. He's completely different. He's very much like his father. Jun Wuhui had been very wise even before he had personally led the army. He had never revealed his talent. And, it seems that Jun Moxie is also the same. He had suddenly risen to prominence half a year ago. This debauchee of the past was like an unbridled whirlwind. And, he had madly swept from the Tianxiang city to the southern Heaven City. He could have been restrained in Tianxiang. But, he's fully fledged now that he's returned from the southern Heaven City. A young eagle spreads its wings. It's still young, but it's already high up in the clouds, and it can look down on the world. Moreover, this boy's temperament is vicious. He's always been vengeful since he started his cultivation. Moreover, he's cruel and merciless. He's firm and resolute. He doesn't hesitate to kill. So, he can't be underestimated. Moreover, he has a powerful backer. So, he doesn't have any scruples. He does what he wants, and looks down on the common people. It can be seen from the moment he entered the city that he doesn't care about the lives of the people in this world. He doesn't care about blood. And he doesn't care about sins. This kind of person is the most frightening. Your Majesty isn't afraid that Jun Zhantian and Jun Wu Yi will get their hands on concrete evidence. But everything will come to an end if this kid gets his hands on any evidence. Is there no other way besides abandoning it? I'm really. The king's face was pale, but he clenched his fists. He clenched his fists, as if he had made up his mind. This is the safest and most dependable method. To deal with a person like Jun Moxie, no. The most important thing to guard against a person like Jun Mo Xie was to make sure that he wouldn't be able to get hold of any evidence against him. Your Majesty, you must know that the biggest difference between Jun Moxie and Jun Zhantian is that he doesn't have any feelings for Tian Xiang. Moreover, it seems that Jun Moxie, Mr. Wen's eyes revealed a strange look. It seemed as if he was afraid. He what? The Emperor asked. Chapter 444. The more Mr. Wen spoke, the more serious his tone became. Even the most famous cold-blooded expert of the present age, Lei Wu Bei, wouldn't be able to be as calm as Jun Mo Xie in this regard. His contempt for human life is ingrained in his bones, and his thirst for blood is ingrained in his soul. Your Majesty, Jun Moxie is far more dangerous than anyone else. This is a creature born to kill. Even the supreme assassin Chu Chi Hun might not be able to match this level of danger. Mr. Wen paused for a long time. He couldn't describe what he was feeling. So, he unconsciously stopped speaking. His Majesty the Emperor quivered and shivered. Mr. Wen didn't need to explain it too clearly. The Emperor had already realized it. The consequences could be imagined if Jun Moxie were to get his hands on the evidence that he had framed his father. Jun Moxie will do whatever it takes to get his hands on it. And the Emperor won't be able to shake the strength of Jun Moxie's current strength. I won't be sure even if I launch a surprise attack. The Jun family will be a rare top-notch expert if they manage to escape. So, I'll have to be on tenterhooks every day in order to guard against the assassination and revenge of such an expert. My days will be miserable. That heavy psychological pressure will be enough to make a person drink a pot of water. The Blood Sword Hall. I have no choice but to abandon it. I have to abandon it. Moreover, we can only be gentle with the Jun family. We can only be gentle to the very end. Mr. Wen suddenly smiled. I believe that the Jun family doesn't have any concrete evidence at the moment. So, there's still a leeway for us to turn the situation around. But, it won't be impossible for Your Majesty to repair the relationship between the two families. I remember that Senior Jun had proposed to Your Majesty that Jun Moxie would marry Princess Raimu 6 months ago. The Emperor's eyes were fixed on the setting sun. He then took a deep breath and said, Yes, that's true. Mr. Wen smiled. Then, Your Majesty should have a plan. The Emperor was silent for a moment and let out a long sigh, as if he still felt it was inappropriate. He suddenly asked, Sir, I wonder if there are any young talents in the Hermitage? Mr. Wen was startled. He pondered for a long time and said, Nothing. Although there are many otherworldly experts in the Immortal Palace, they are not young anymore. How can they still have such worldly thoughts? The Emperor said unwillingly, Then, the young Palace Lord of the Immortal Palace? The young Palace Lord is almost 60 years old this year. Mr. Wen smiled bitterly. The young Palace Lord's son is 30 years old, and his grandson is only 5 or 6 years old. Moreover, the Immortal Palace Lord may not be willing to make an enemy out of the Jun family even if the Emperor wishes to establish a connection with the Jun family. After all, the strength of the Jun family is unfathomable. The Emperor finally sighed and said, That being the case, we have no choice but to let June Moxie benefit from it. Mr. Wen also sighed and said, Your Majesty, you mustn't be too optimistic. It's hard to say whether the June family will agree to this matter. It's hard to send charcoal in snowy weather, but it's hard to add flowers to brocade. The room became silent. Neither of them spoke again. Then, they sighed at the same time. After a long time. In the Dugu family, old man Dugu Zongheng's eyes opened wide like copper bells. He looked at his granddaughter, who had been graceful a few months ago. But now, she was walking down the palanquin like a penguin. She was swaying while holding her big belly. Old man Dugu felt as if all the blood in his body had rushed to his head. Dugu Xiaoyi's mother let out a sound. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. She covered her mouth, and tears started to fall down. Everyone was petrified with their mouths agape. Old man Dugu finally came back to his senses. He was like a crazy tiger in a cage. He circled around several times. But he couldn't find anything to vent his anger on. So, he suddenly roared in a depressed manner. Then, he ferociously pounced on one of his sons. Then, he started to beat up his 7 grandsons. He didn't care about his body or his head, and started to beat them up in a frenzied manner. He shouted and cursed as he beat them. His accent was very chaotic. Nobody knew what he was cursing. The heroes and legends rushed forward. The 7 bull-like men covered their heads, and squatted down in a circle. Then they stuck out their butts. Cough, cough. You can beat them as much as you want. But don't hit our faces. These 7 15th days of the 8th month will be dedicated to you. Great General Dugawudi covered his head and scurried away like a rat. Dugu Xiaoyi quickly came forward to mediate. The effect was very obvious wherever she went. Everyone stayed far away from her. In fact, they were afraid of touching her. That would be terrible. Therefore, Dugu Xiaoyi became more and more complacent. She ran here and there like a firefighter. In fact, it seemed as if she was playing a fun game. A large group of women followed behind her, and shouted at her to stop. Old man Dugu Zongheng's anger wasn't a rare thing in the Dugu family. Dugu Xiaoyi had also gotten used to it. But Dugu Xiaoyi seemed to have gotten carried away. After all, it wasn't fun to tie such a thick pillow to one's body. Moreover, it wasn't very sturdy. But it couldn't stop one's body from running. Therefore, it was a miracle that one could hold on until now. Therefore, they held on for a little while. Then, the old lady had been staring at her granddaughter since she had come in. But she had suddenly discovered something that had shocked her. The old lady had felt something strange the moment Dugu Xiaoyi had come in. Look at this girl. She doesn't look like what? Her eyebrows are tightly knitted. Her neck is straight. Her legs are long and slender. She doesn't look like she has lost her virginity. So, how can she have such a big belly? Besides, it has only been a few days. So, how can she have such a big body? The old lady's first impression was the strongest. Therefore, she couldn't figure out the mystery behind it. She was puzzled when she saw Dugu Xiaoyi's big belly slowly slide down as she ran. It started to slide from her chest to her lower abdomen. Moreover, it continued to slide down until it reached her thighs. The old lady's eyes suddenly opened wide. Dugu Xiaoyi had also sensed that something was wrong. So, she quickly and stealthily used her hands to support her lower abdomen. But she didn't dare to run wantonly anymore. Instead, she sneakily stuck her head out to look around. Everyone stop! What a scandal! The old lady angrily shouted as she slammed her dragon-headed walking stick on the ground. The old man and his grandchildren were happy to be beaten. So, they were still fighting in high spirit. The one who was being beaten was shouting and yelling. It looked like a pig slaughterhouse. Xiaoyi, come here. The old lady didn't know what to do with the old man and his grandchildren. So, she rolled her eyes and called out, What are you doing? My body is heavy. It's inconvenient. Dugu Xiaoyi dilly-dallied as she held her belly. She lowered her eyebrows and looked a little guilty. It's not convenient for you to run around a while ago. Let me take a closer look. The old lady grabbed her hand and moved it towards her belly. Duguxiaoyi was startled. She spread her arms and jumped backwards. She was as nimble as a fawn. Then, she vigilantly said, "Grandmother, what are you doing? This is your great-grandson. You must be careful." She hadn't finished speaking when a pop sound was heard, and the great-grandson that Duguxiaoyi had mentioned fell out of her skirt. It bounced twice on the ground and rolled unsteadily for less than 10 feet. Then, it stopped moving. It was a round pillow, and a lively and adorable kitten was embroidered on it. It was a long ribbon. One end of the ribbon was connected to the pillow like a skipping rope, and the other end was still hanging on Duguxiaoyi's waist. This thing was already very active, so when Duguxiaoyi loosened her grip and jumped, she immediately gave herself away. This. Duguxiaoyi pursed her lips and wrung her hands. Her face was full of embarrassment. She was bashful, and couldn't say anything. Her delicate and pretty face had turned red. This matter immediately caused another round of commotion in the entire family. Old man Dugu Zongheng opened his mouth, and his fist stopped in midair. His old face had turned green and white. Dugu Wudi was sitting on the ground with his eyes wide open. His entire body was covered in dust. Dugu Chung felt wronged as he looked at his grandfather. He then muttered, "I told you that nothing had happened. I told you that nothing had happened. I wouldn't have known if something had happened. I told you. You told me that you're an idiot. You're asking for a beating." Old man Dugu Zongheng roared like a thunderclap. Dugu Chung shrank his neck and shut his mouth. Old man Dugu Zongheng's face twisted as he strode towards Duguxiaoyi. He was so angry that he started to laugh. Good girl. You've grown up. You can tease your grandfather now. Amazing. He nodded fiercely. He didn't know what to say. Grandfather, I. Duguxiaoyi was panic-stricken. She turned her eyes and retreated in panic. She looked around for help, but everyone had turned their faces to the side and refused to help her. This little girl is out of control. She needs to be taught a lesson. What would happen if we don't teach her a lesson? This is too improper. She's the daughter of an aristocratic family. She's deceiving her family. But she's even carrying a fake belly in front of everyone. Give her a good beating. Dugu Wudi said what everyone was thinking. Help me. Duguxiaoyi ran away. Old man Dugu Zongheng strode forward and grabbed the long strip of cloth on the ground. Then, he exerted his strength and fished Duguxiaoyi as if he was fishing. Then, he pulled her back with a whooshing sound. Then, he pressed his palm on his knee and slapped it twice. Duguxiaoyi struggled and screamed as tears streamed down her face. Old man Dugu didn't feel anything when he hit his grandson. But, he felt sorry for his granddaughter after slapping her twice. So, he didn't have the heart to hit her again. Father, leave this disobedient girl to me. I'll make this girl. Dugu Wudi crawled up from the ground. He rubbed his hands and came over with a fierce look on his face. She dared to make fun of me. She needs to be taught a good lesson. She needs to be beaten. What can you do to this girl? You bastard, get lost. Dugu Zongheng blew his beard and shouted, Xiao Yi's body is delicate. How can you hit her? Get out of here and scram to the side. Chapter 445. Fourth update. The outbreak is complete. Duguxiaoyi stood up while sobbing. She wiped her tears as if she had suffered a great injustice. The entire family looked at the pillow in the distance, and didn't make a sound. After a long time, Duguxiaoyi's mother looked at her mother-in-law helplessly. Mother, what should we do? The old lady Dugu angrily said, What should we do? He snorted heavily and let out a long sigh. Things have already come to this. What else can we do? Dugu Zongheng glared at her and said angrily, What else can we do? This girl came in with a big belly. I think the entire Tianxiang city knows that the Dugu family's granddaughter is pregnant with the Jun family's child. What else can we do? Damn it. Such a thing actually happened in the Dugu family. This old man is indescribably angry. It's better to let anyone take advantage of her than to let that old man Jun take advantage of her. This is truly a misfortune for our family. Father, you mean? Dugu Wu Di spoke cautiously. He finally understood that the one who made the biggest mistake today was not Dugu Xiaoyi, but himself. It seemed that whatever he said was wrong. He had become a thorn in the old man's side. I only gave birth to a daughter. I didn't do anything wrong. What I mean? Bastard. What do I mean in this family now? Can my opinion represent your daughter's opinion? If I say no, then wouldn't the Dugu family stink to the heavens? Can't you use your brain a little? Do you want to anger this old man to death? You idiot! Dugu Zongheng stomped his feet and cursed. Dugu Wu Di shrunk his neck and didn't say a word. I'll get scolded no matter what I say. I won't say anything, all right? Why aren't you saying anything? Aren't you very capable? You still dare to play silent resistance with me? You've really grown up. Old man Dugu walked back and forth in a fiendish manner. His finger was pointing at the great General Dugu's nose, and his spittle was like a torrential rain. Dugu Wudi didn't expect to stir up trouble by keeping his mouth shut. This time, he was truly speechless. Arrange for someone to go to the Jun family tomorrow to discuss this matter. They had to come to a conclusion. We must not let that brat slip away after eating his fill. All the good things in the world have been taken by that brat alone. The old lady Dugu was also very valiant as she made the final decision. If he wants to marry my granddaughter, that foppish brat will have to pass a test first. Tell him to come see me tomorrow. Tomorrow isn't too good, is it? However, the Jun family is still in troubled times. Tomorrow is a little too hasty. Dugu Wudi looked at his mother with a somewhat fearful expression. If I say tomorrow, it will be tomorrow. You have to do it no matter what. The old lady Dugu glared at him. You too, along with those 7 fools, deal with these matters in the capital. Wouldn't that be the end? It's not a big deal. It's not worth causing such a ruckus. That brat Jun Moxie has killed a lot of people in the capital today, Dugu Wudi said in a low voice. Seeing that there was no response, he praised again. That brat is really fierce. It's good that he's fierce. The old lady nodded in a gratified manner. The grandson-in-law of the old lady can't be a weakling. The rumors say that he single-handedly defeated 4 Shenxians. But it's just a rumor. Today, I saw him slaughter a lot of people in the capital. He's truly a heroic man. As she spoke, she suddenly became angry. You disgraceful son of AB*TCH. You clearly know that we're in the same boat as the Jun family, but you didn't help them? You're so heartless. What if Xiao Yi gets bullied because her family isn't strong enough? Can you bear this responsibility? Dugu Wudi was thoroughly confused. So, my mother is just as unreasonable as my father. And I thought that my mother was a bit more reasonable. But she's already thinking about Dugu Xiaoyi's happy life after marriage. This mother's consciousness is too advanced. He watched as the group of women surrounded the old lady and Dugu Xiaoyi as they walked away. They seemed to be discussing the wedding ceremony, the matters to take note of when giving birth, and even the name of their great-grandson. Dugu Wudi and Dugu Zongheng looked at each other in dismay. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After a long while, old man Jun raised his leg and kicked Dugu Wudi's buttocks. You scoundrel! Why aren't you going to help them? Why are you just standing here? Is it nice to look at? Dugu Wudi hastily covered his head and scurried away like a rat. He secretly cursed in his heart. Jun Moxie, you cur. It's all because of you, you little scoundrel. The 7 heroes and legends rushed forward, didn't wait for their grandfather's gaze to land on them. They quickly stood up and followed behind Dugawudi in a majestic manner. The entire Tianxiang city was turned upside down by the people outside. However, Jun Moxie was holed up at home. He was single-mindedly preparing for Old Man Jun's advancement. This was a world where the strong were revered. So, it was better to increase one's strength as quickly as possible. As for those clowns outside, would they be able to run away? One must know that the monk could run away, but the temple couldn't. Jun Moxie wasn't in a hurry to take revenge. At the same time, let those people scare themselves in fear during this period of time. He first sent Guan Qinghan back to her courtyard after he returned home. Guan Qinghan suddenly called out to him as he was about to leave. Jun Moxie turned around in astonishment and saw Guan Qinghan standing at the doorway. Her stature was frail, and her face was somewhat thin. She looked into Jun Moxie's eyes. She was somewhat afraid. She was shivering. Moreover, she had a strong desire to seek protection. Guan Qinghan suddenly turned her head away when Jun Moxie looked at her. Then, a teardrop fell to the ground. Jun Moxie's heart trembled. This woman, this beautiful woman, this peerless beauty, who knew how much she had endured? How much suffering has she gone through? How much has she sacrificed? Who has empathized with her? Perhaps in this world, where men are supreme and women are like servants' clothes, only Jun Moxie, who came from the modern era, could truly see her suffering. Only he could truly empathize with her state of mind. Only he could put himself in a woman's shoes and think for her. No one else could. Even if they could do it and think of it, it would only be how it should be. But is it really how it should be? This woman who has always been as cold as snow and as proud as the moon is still a woman. She finally revealed her weak side. Perhaps, Guan Qinghan's previous cold and aloof attitude was because she was helpless. A young girl who was used as a tool by her family to curry favor with the rich and powerful. From then on, her life was set in stone. Knowing that her fiancé was a hero, the young girl's heart was finally comforted. But, not long after, the wedding date was set. She was only waiting to wear the red ribbon and marry into a rich and powerful family. Then, she would spend the rest of her life in peace. But, bad news came one after another. Her fiancé had died in battle at a young age. She had just suffered a huge blow. But, for the sake of her family, she married a memorial tablet. Among them, there was willingness and coercion. But wasn't that voluntary? Wasn't he forced to do it? If I stayed in the family, I would only be a tool to connect with another rich and powerful family. It would be better to come to the Jun family and live alone for the rest of my life. At least, I would be able to leave those ugly schemes. This willingness is the despair of my family and kinship. Otherwise, who would be willing to marry a dead hero and live alone for the rest of their lives? Young girls who were like flowers, like poems, like dreams, each with their own feelings, would rather marry a dead hero and live alone for the rest of their lives? But Guan Qinghan had no other way. She was in despair. Despair of kinship, despair of her family, despair of her own life. So, she came to the Jun family. Fortunately, the Jun family had treated her well. So, they had allowed her to live in peace for the past few years. But, the Shui Hun Manor incident happened at this time. Her family, which had already given up all hope, had come to force her again. Guan Qinghan is ready to die. But, the Jun family has propped up the sky for her. So, she won't regret anything for the sake of the Jun family. She won't regret anything. Therefore, she had followed the army to the southern heaven city. She had secretly harbored the thought of sacrificing herself to protect the Jun family. She didn't sacrifice herself. But, her brother-in-law, Jun Moxie, had been drugged with an aphrodisiac. And he was on the verge of death. And the instigator had already escaped without a trace. I can leave at any time if I want to. But, where can I find a woman in the barracks? I can't just watch my brother-in-law burn to death if I don't look for a woman. Guan Qinghan was helpless. So, she had to save him with her own body. Some people might say that Guan Qinghan knew that Dugu Xiaoyi was infatuated with Jun Moxie. So, why didn't she call Dugu Xiaoyi back to fulfill Dugu Xiaoyi's wish? But, how could a girl like her say such a thing? Moreover, why did Dugu Xiaoyi run away? Didn't she know the consequences of drugging him? Who doesn't know what will happen after drugging him with an aphrodisiac? Dugu Xiaoyi is such a freak. But Guan Qinghan isn't. She would only think, why did she leave if she had drugged him with an aphrodisiac? How could she come back if she had left? Guan Qinghan had no other choice when she thought about it this way. She could only use her own innocence in exchange for the Jun family's bloodline. In exchange for the continuation of her benefactor's family's bloodline. Guan Qinghan has no other choice. And she's duty-bound to do so. It doesn't matter whether or not she has a good impression of Jun Moxie. She can't back down at this time. But Jun Moxie has saved her life. But she has fallen into a huge whirlpool. Will the whole world blame her? She had a relationship with her brother-in-law. No matter what the reason is, she can't escape from this blame. Personal reputation. The reputation of two families. Chastity. Chastity. All of this has made it hard for her to breathe. Guan Qinghan would have committed suicide if Jun Moxie had hesitated for even a moment. She's the bravest person in her life. She's the only one who has managed to return to Tianxiang City. It's all for the hope in her heart. Jun Moxie didn't let her down. But she's still as weak as duckweed in the wind. Jun Moxie's heart throbbed. He took 2 steps forward. Both of them looked at each other. Jun Moxie could clearly see the helplessness and desolation in Guan Qinghan's eyes. Jun Moxie gazed at her deeply. He slowly reached out his hand and held her hand. He said gently but firmly, "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Jun Moxie's words were like a sharp sword. It pierced through the haze in the sky. Then, a ray of light appeared in the cloudy sky. This sentence is like an oath. It's like a winter thunder and a summer snow. It's like a shoulder that's as firm as a mountain. It's like a lofty mountain. It's leaning in front of Guan Qinghan's eyes. Guan Qinghan's eyes lit up. Her lips trembled, and she wanted to pull her little hand out from his warm palm. Although she doesn't want to. Jun Moxie didn't let go. Instead, he held her hand tighter. He said it again. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Guan Qinghan didn't struggle anymore. She let him hold her hand. Her lips trembled. She didn't say anything. 2 streams of tears rolled down her cheeks. This pair of hands is so strong. So warm. Guan Qinghan's tears fell like rain. The day after tomorrow. My comrade is getting married in Beijing. We're having a get-together. Feng Ling will leave for Beijing tomorrow. Ever since he retired from the army, his comrades in arms have scattered. Some have sacrificed themselves. Some are uncontactable. It's rare for them to meet each other. This time, 7 years ago, there were 45 retired comrades in arms. 32 have gathered. 5 years ago there were 19. After this get-together, there might not be another get-together. I received the news a month in advance. I've been suppressing it. I'm afraid my brothers will be worried. I'm also worried about whether I can last this month. I can't be delayed because of the get-together. Now I'm done. I'm not asking for leave. I'm not asking for monthly vote. I'm just saying. Chapter 446. After leaving Guan Qinghan's place, Jun Moxie took a detour to his own courtyard to check on Yi Guhan's current condition. After all, Yi Guhan's Xianqi was crippled, his dantian was damaged, and he had suffered from severe internal and external injuries. Now, his physique was even weaker than an ordinary person's. It was unknown if Yi Guhan suddenly had a strong will to live, but his broken body was overflowing with vitality. This made Jun Moxie very surprised. A person's state at the moment was really beyond Dashao's expectations. However, Yi Gohan had already fallen asleep, so Dashao did not disturb him. Back then, he saved him mostly because of Third Uncle Jun Wui's face. If not for Third Uncle's words that day, even if Raimu begged him, it would not matter. The true reason why Yi Gohan was saved by Dashao was because of his love and selfless sacrifice for the love of his heart. The next location was back to the hall. Dashao thought for a moment and decided to prepare to help Grandpa Jun upgrade his cultivation level. This was not because Jun Moxie was too anxious, but because Jun Moxie had always believed in one sentence: good things, especially delicious things, may not always be considered as his own once it is in his hands. There is a chance that it could be snatched away by others at any time. Only when it is completely digested can it truly be considered as his own. The peak level 9 Xiandan had caused such a huge storm in the past, attracting experts from all over the world. Naturally, it was a good thing that could be snatched away at any time. Moreover, the Jun family seemed to be holding countless advantages at the moment. They had a great advantage, and could look down upon the entire Tianxiang. In fact, they could even look down upon the entire world. However, the young Master Jun clearly realized that the Jun family's foundation was very weak. In fact, it was far from being comparable to a genuine superfamily. It was just an empty shell to put up a strong front. The Jun family's greatest reliance was his virtual master. But that extremely powerful and mysterious master didn't exist at all. In fact, the Jun family didn't have a spirit Xian expert in the truest sense of the word. Moreover, Jun Mo-Xie had defeated 4 spirit Xian experts. The Jun family still needed a long period of accumulation before they could grow into a real superfamily. But right now they needed a real Shun Xian master to appear in the family. Therefore, the matter of promoting the old master's cultivation level had to be put on the agenda as soon as possible. Jun Moxie led the confused Jun Zhan Tian and the solitary eagle into the bottom of the newly built tower. This was what Jun Moxie had specially requested when he was building it. It had to be exceptionally stable and sturdy. Moreover, the entire tower was made of granite. It was sealed tightly. Even if someone were to deliberately shout inside, they would not be heard by the people outside. His goal was to wait for this moment, because the power fluctuations of the level 9 Xiandan were too great. Jun Wu-Yi had received young Master Jun's instructions in advance, and had mobilized the most elite troops to protect the entire pagoda from all directions after these 3 men had entered the pagoda. In fact, dozens of guards had been set up both in the open and in the dark. Jun Wui, Song Shang, and Hai Qinfeng, the 3 Tian Xian masters, stood in 3 different directions in a triangular formation. They were on full alert, eliminating all possible interference, and the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer members, who were exclusive to Jun Moxie, were in charge of the innermost layer of security. Everyone was hidden in the dark with swords in their hands. The Xian Beast tendon crossbows in their hands flashed with a faint cold light. There were traps everywhere. Apart from the silk string trap and the poison smoke trap, there were also 7 or 8 hidden weapons that Jun Mo-Xie had used to soak in the poisonous water. As long as one took a wrong step in this dusky night, even if one was at the peak of Tian Xian or even a Shun Xian expert, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. With this kind of combat power and this kind of ambush, even if a supreme master came to look for trouble, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to break through these layers of defense. In the tower, when Jun Moxie took out that Xiandan, the extremely pure energy fluctuations caused Solitary Eagle to open his eyes wide. After a long while, he smacked his lips and said, "Damn it, the whole world was fighting to snatch it. I didn't even hesitate to come from the grasslands thousands of miles away. But I didn't expect this thing to stay in your hands so peacefully. It didn't even show its face. That thing we snatched, what is it? That's a fake. June Moxie rubbed his nose and smiled without the slightest bit of embarrassment. Actually, I felt quite embarrassed when I saw you fighting so fiercely for it that night. Solitary Eagle snorted and rolled his eyes. Look at you smiling so slyly. Where is the slightest bit of embarrassment? Getting angry with you is a waste of my feelings. I can't be bothered. In any case, I don't really want this Xiandan. It's more important for me to hone my unique skills and improve my own strength. It's best if you don't mind. Such an open-minded Supreme Eagle would definitely be willing to guide my grandfather to advance. June Moxie laughed. After saying half of his sentence, his expression suddenly turned solemn. He turned to Solitary Eagle and said something. Old Eagle, I'm counting on you. These words of June Moxie could be said with sincerity. After all, Grandpa June was June Moxie's first relative in this world. The advancement of his grandfather's strength was undoubtedly important. However, his grandfather's life was even more important. It didn't matter how much his grandfather's strength increased. In fact, it didn't matter if his grandfather's strength increased or not. However, his life was of utmost importance. Although Dashao was fully confident in this matter, June Moxie still asked for his help. It wasn't for anything else. It was to let Solitary Eagle know that I can't afford to fail in this matter. I can't afford to lose. I can only succeed. I can't afford to fail. Solitary Eagle's expression turned solemn. With a rare dignified expression, he said in a heavy tone, Don't worry. Then, he frowned and said, However, I won't be able to fuse this thing by myself. I will need the assistance of several special medicinal herbs. Any one of those medicinal herbs is. June Moxie flipped his palm. Suddenly, 3 kinds of medicinal herbs appeared in his empty palm, as if he was performing a magic trick. 3 kinds of rare medicinal herbs. Heavenly star grass. Tricolored lingji. 9 xian root. 3 kinds of special medicinal herbs needed to fuse with the xiandan. All of them were prepared. Furthermore, the quality of each type was much better, far surpassing the normal standard. Solitary Eagle exclaimed in surprise. He carefully examined them and said, Kid, you're too resourceful. You even got all of these things. That being the case, there's no problem at all. June Zhantian realized that June Moxie wanted to use the 9th grade Xian Dan to forcefully upgrade his cultivation. He couldn't help but feel displeased. Xie, your grandfather is already old. What's the use of such a good thing? It would be a waste of such a rare treasure and a great opportunity. Not to mention, it would also consume a lot of Senior Eagle's xianqi. If we must do this, it would be better for you or your third uncle to take it. Wouldn't that be a great thing for our June family? It would be even more powerful. But it would be a waste for me. June Moxie smiled faintly. His eyes emitted a deep emotion as he slowly said, Grandfather's words are wrong. It's precisely because I'm old that I urgently need this thing. One had to know that everyone's age was different. As long as there weren't any accidents, an ordinary person would live between 60 to 80 years of age, while a profound practitioner's age would mostly be over 100 years old. A Sky Xian Pinnacle expert would live between 150 to 200 years old. And this is under the condition that no accidents happen and he will live a peaceful life. June Moxie sighed and said, But I've been a general since I was young. I've been fighting for my whole life. I believe that I've already suffered countless injuries. My body has long been damaged, and my vitality has also been greatly damaged. Currently, I have pure Xian Qi to suppress it, so there shouldn't be too much of a problem. But, if I were to engage in a fierce battle with an expert of the same level, or a sudden illness, it's very likely that all my injuries will burst forth at the same time. But, if you take this Xiandan, you can increase your lifespan by 100 years. Secondly, you can recuperate your body and restore it to its peak condition. June Moxie smiled. As for me and the third uncle, We have other plans that are even more effective than this. You can rest assured. Jun Tian stroked his long beard and pondered in silence. In the end, he was still somewhat reluctant. Old people all have this mentality. They are always reluctant to use all the good things in the world. They can't wait to stuff all the good things in the world into the stomachs of their children and grandchildren. Even if they don't want a single good thing, they would still be very satisfied and happy. Jun Tian currently had this mentality of an old man. Seeing that the old man was still hesitating, Jun Moxie became anxious and said, "Grandfather, I'm telling you, if you really don't want to use it, I will immediately destroy this thing. Although this thing is good, it will also cause trouble. In any case, the third uncle and I will definitely not use it. Grandfather, you must know that you are now the backbone of the Jun family. Everything should be based on the overall situation." After using reason, emotion, and both carrot and stick, Grandpa Jun finally reluctantly agreed. But in the end, he repeatedly confirmed that Jun Moxie and Jun Wui really have other methods. Only then did he feel relieved. Jun Moxie couldn't say too much in front of the solitary eagle. There were some things that he really couldn't say. But it really took him a lot of brainpower to deal with the old man's probing. He was so anxious that his back was drenched in sweat for the evil monarch, who wouldn't even blink even if he slaughtered everyone in the world. This was an unbelievable thing. Fearing that a long delay would bring trouble, the moment Grandpa Jun agreed, the evil monarch Jun Dashao hurriedly crushed the heavenly star grass. With a flash of red light, the pure medicinal properties of the heavenly star grass had already been pasted on the surface of the level 9 Xian Dan. In a split second, the surging power of the Xian Dan suddenly stagnated. In the blink of an eye, it was completely restrained. The pure and restless energy fluctuated, as if it had suddenly become the most obedient baby. Jun Moxie didn't have the time to sigh. He gave Solitary Eagle a look. Solitary Eagle understood tacitly and stepped behind Jun Tian. He placed his palms on the top of Jun Tian's head and the other on the back of Jun Tian's head. At the same time, Jun Tian sat down cross-legged with his eyes slightly closed. His appearance was solemn. The unique bitter fragrance of the tricolored Ganoderma permeated the air. Jun Moxie's art of unlocking heaven's fortune had already infused the medicinal properties of the tricolored Ganoderma into the Xian Dan. Not a single bit of it was wasted. Suddenly, the Xian Dan became as bright as a small sun in the dark night. It shone so brightly that the inside of the pagoda could be seen. The three of them felt a sharp pain in their eyes that they couldn't look at. A halo of light suddenly lit up. Under the glaring light there was a kind of gentleness that made people feel at ease. Jun Moxie didn't neglect it. He shouted loudly and operated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune with all his might. The Xian Dan's radiance once again flashed violently. A bright yellow stream of water suddenly shot out from the Xian Dan. It shot right into Jun Tian's mouth. At the same time, the last remaining elixir in Jun Moxie's hand, the 9 Xian root, transformed into a stream of water of the same thickness. It flashed in the air, and also entered Jun Tian's mouth. Not one bit earlier, not one bit later. Meanwhile, Solitary Eagle's supreme-level strength was also fully activated. It continuously fused into Jun Tian's meridians. Jun Moxie finally heaved a sigh of relief. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. In fact, it could be said that he had already succeeded halfway. Whether it was the heavenly star grass or the tricolored Ganoderma, Jun Moxie had selected the best of them. As for the 9 Xian root, he had used the most essential part of it. With the harmonization of these 3 elixirs in addition to Solitary Eagle's supreme-level strength, there was no doubt that his grandfather would advance. At this time, Jun Moxie finally remembered to use his divine sense to check the surrounding movement. This was the most critical time. A slight disturbance could destroy a supreme-level expert and a Shun Xian who was on the verge of advancing. He couldn't be the slightest bit careless. To be honest, Solitary Eagle's willingness to agree so readily had somewhat exceeded June Moxie's expectations. With Solitary Eagle's experience, how could he not understand the degree of danger of this matter? It wasn't an advancement, but a disturbance. At the most critical juncture, even a cry from a 3-year-old child could directly lead to the invasion of the demons in their hearts, and cause them to go berserk. June Moxie had originally thought that he would have to waste a lot of words, or that he would have to pay some kind of conditions, but now it seemed that he had somewhat gauged the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. After getting along for a long time, there would always be feelings. Even supreme-level experts were no exception. It was very quiet outside. There wasn't a trace of movement. June Moxie heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, there was no danger. At this time, June Moxie felt that he seemed to have forgotten something. But after thinking about it carefully, he really couldn't recall it. He couldn't help but concentrate and quietly guard his mind, hoping to find out whether he had forgotten or overlooked something. On the other side, a thick layer of white fog rose from June Jean Tion's body, and slowly enveloped Solitary Eagle within it. June Moxie looked at this thick white fog, and couldn't help but think of the pure spiritual qi in the Hongjun pagoda. Then, he thought of the strange white fog in the Tian Fa forest, and he sighed in his heart. The world is really big, and there are really all kinds of strange things. Suddenly, a light flashed in his mind, and Da Xiao's heart thumped as he thought of what he had forgotten. Mei Shiyan, Mei Qian Qian. These two women had followed him from Tian Fa all the way here. When he entered the city today, he clearly saw them sitting in the carriage with Guan Qing Han. But now, how did they mysteriously disappear? When did they get off the carriage? And when did he disappear? June Moxie suddenly took a deep breath and frowned. It was very chaotic at that time, but he had always been used to dealing with chaotic situations. Needless to say, the carriage was right behind him. Logically speaking, it shouldn't have been able to hide when they got off the carriage. But he didn't see when they disappeared. Moreover, the appearance of such a fairy-like beauty was bound to cause a considerable commotion. But June Moxie recalled the situation at that time, and realized that no one's eyes had revealed a look of amazement. In other words, no one had seen them get off the carriage. But how did they disappear? He had used at least a dozen methods to probe these two women along the way, but he hadn't found anything unusual. Could it be that these two women were so brilliant that even I couldn't see through them? What kind of strength does it take to escape from under my nose without making a sound? How terrifying would that be? Looking at the appearance of these two women, even if they were older than me, they couldn't be that much older. Could it be that they are super experts who have surpassed the great masters? How nonsensical would that be? But how would I explain the current situation if they weren't? June Moxie knitted his brows, and a huge alarm bell rang in his heart. From their first encounter to their arrival in Tianxiang, all their interactions along the way had been carefully replayed in June Moxie's mind. He had deduced everything little by little from the two women's tiny movements and subtle expressions. June Moxie had finally discovered two suspicious points. The first one was that the green-clothed girl's appearance seemed to have changed a little during this month-long journey. It was only a change in the thickness of her eyebrows. But June Moxie had still discovered it when he had calmed down at that moment. The green-clothed girl had changed her appearance before. This was confirmed without a doubt. But why did she change her appearance? I'm part of the army, and I don't have much interaction with this kind of girl. Could it be that they're afraid of being recognized? In other words, I've seen her before. So, who is she? That white-clothed girl, Mei Shuiyan, shouldn't have changed her appearance. This is very obvious. Moreover, her prejudice against me is also very obvious. In fact, she has often caused trouble for me along the way. This is also worth considering. Could it be that I've offended her before? But she didn't change her appearance. So, I haven't seen her before. So, how should I say that I've offended her? Moreover, I wouldn't have forgotten such a peerless beauty if I had seen her before. Moreover, they had confronted the Silver Blizzard City when we had first met. June Moxie let out a long sigh. These two women are definitely not ordinary people. But June Moxie still couldn't figure out who these two women were, even though he had thought about it carefully. The green-clothed girl and the Chien Sun Serpent Queen must have some kind of relationship. Otherwise, how could there be such a coincidence when I've been constantly harassed by poisonous snakes? Even if they're not the Snake King, they must be sisters. There's no mistake about this. But, who is the white-clothed girl? Mei Shuyan. I've never heard of her before. Could it be that she's related to Lady Yu Er from the Spirit Fog Lakes and Ichang Pavilion? At this moment, June Moxie suddenly had an inexplicable thought. I'm afraid that I'll have countless entanglements with these two women in my life. Or maybe it'll be troublesome. As for his luck with women, although June Moxie felt that he was quite handsome, he wasn't narcissistic enough to think that any woman would fall in love with him the moment they see him. It's so complicated, but I can't find the slightest clue. This is really troublesome. June Moxie let out a long sigh. Why are you sighing? A voice sounded. June Moxie opened his eyes and saw June Jean Tian standing in front of him, looking at him with concern. June Moxie was delighted and asked, "Grandfather, how do you feel? Did you successfully break through?" "Break through? Did you successfully break through?" Grandpa June blew his beard and laughed heartily. "This is a huge breakthrough. I never dreamed that I could reach such heights in this life." Indeed, Grandpa June's progress this time is simply unbelievable, Solitary Eagle said in a strange tone of extreme exhaustion. There was a faint trace of envy in his tone, as well as jealousy. "At the final stage, your grandfather nearly sucked me dry." Supreme Solitary Eagle smiled bitterly. Coupled with the power of the Xian Dan and the power of the elixirs, this huge progress is rarely seen since ancient times. In just a few hours, Solitary Eagle smiled bitterly and said, "This result makes this old man feel that I'm a fool who only knows how to practice martial arts for the rest of my life." Could it be that the progress is huge? June Moxie was ecstatic. "It's more than just huge." Grandpa June was very happy. He smiled happily and said, "Before the breakthrough, this old man was at the peak of Tianxian and was on the verge of breaking through. The moment the elixirs entered my body, the Xian Dan entered my body and Supreme Solitary Eagle activated his Xian Qi, I successfully broke through to the first level of Shen Xian. After that, your grandfather absorbed the power of the Xian Dan and forcefully broke through the barrier, reaching the second level of Shen Xian." Solitary Eagle sighed in disappointment, but it wasn't over yet. The effect of the Xian Dan had slowed down a little. But the power of the three elixirs had fiercely stimulated the Xian Dan to move forward. It surged forward little by little, and rampaged through my meridians. I nearly died from exhaustion. It was with great difficulty that I managed to protect Grandpa June's meridians. But this old man suddenly realized that your grandfather's luck was extremely good. He was lucky enough to break through the third level of Shen Xian, and that's why he stopped. In other words, my grandfather is now at the third level of Shen Xian. He's only one level below that of Xiaobuyu? June Moxie became excited. He clapped his hands and chuckled. "It's almost as I expected. I thought that I could reach the second level of Shen Xian. But I've unexpectedly advanced by one level." "What advanced by one level?" "Shen Xian is at the beginning of the second level. Then, he's at the middle level. Then, he's at the beginning of the third level. Your grandfather is now at the third level of Shen Xian. Damn it! I'm so lucky!" Solitary Eagle panted with rage as he flung his sleeves. He felt very unbalanced. "I'm going to sleep. You two can stay here foolishly. I won't accompany you anymore." June Jean Tian laughed heartily. He cupped his hands and bowed. "Many thanks for your help, supreme solitary eagle. This June is very grateful. The entire June family is very grateful. Chapter 447. Having successfully broken through, Grandpa June was very excited. After talking for a long time, he noticed that his grandson was covering his nose and stammering. He had a rather uncomfortable and sullen look on his face. His eyes were constantly sizing up his body. Grandpa June could not help but feel suspicious. Could it be that my body is covered in dust? Is there a need to look at your grandfather like that? He subconsciously looked at his body, and found that he was covered in dust. It should be because there was no dust, but because his body was surrounded by stains. The loose robe on his body was sticking to his body, and the original white robe was now covered with a thick layer of unknown stains. The color of the stains could no longer be seen. At the same time, he felt that his body was wrinkled and uncomfortable. Grandpa June used to be a general, and didn't care about these things. But now, he was the Duke of Tianxiang, and had been living like a prince for many years. Moreover, in recent years, he had cultivated his mind and body, and had developed a bit of misophobia, especially in front of the younger generation. This time, he had made a fool of himself. Grandpa June couldn't help but cry out in alarm, and disappeared with a whoosh, leaving behind a sentence. This old man is going to wash up and will be back soon. June Moxie laughed involuntarily. This situation was originally normal. The old man had successfully broken through the barrier of the peak of the sky profound realm, and he had even broken through several levels in one go. At the same time that his power had increased by a large margin, with the help and impact of the powerful external elixirs, it was as if he had undergone an extremely thorough cleansing of his meridians and marrow. All the impurities that had accumulated in his body over the past few decades were all expelled. Adding on to the old injuries that had accumulated for many years, all the future troubles were basically cleared away in one go. If there were no such impurities, Dachau would have suspected that there might be some flaws in his grandfather's breakthrough. After this, June Moxie was sure that with June Zhantian's current body, living to 200 years old or even more wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, his body's ability to protect itself had been greatly enhanced. If he were to use his current body to practice the wonderful martial arts in June Moxie's memory, he would even be able to fight against a supreme expert. June Moxie finally put down one of his worries. A sincere smile appeared on June Moxie's face. He was gratified and happy. In this world where the fist was the strongest, this was the only way to ensure the safety and happiness of the family. What is the purpose of a man's life? It was said that everyone would be destroyed if they didn't look out for themselves. However, at the end of the day, everyone lived for others. They lived for the people who cared about them, the people they cared about, and their loved ones. In his previous life, he was lonely and destitute. Saying that he was living for himself was actually a perfunctory way of saying that he had no other choice. Because he wanted to live for others, but there was no such person. He could only live with the little faith in his heart. Who is worthy of me, the evil monarch's sacrifice? Sacrifice for her? Whether it was robbing the rich to help the poor, punishing the wicked, or for their own country or their own people. In short, it was a belief that supported him. Although he was an assassin in his previous life, he fought for justice, for what he believed to be justice. Whether it was killing or torturing, the stubbornness in his heart never changed. Walk on the path of injustice, and take care of all the injustice in the world. However, the more he did this, the more he went against the so-called righteous path. June Moxie, the evil monarch, was really lonely. That kind of powerlessness was not something an ordinary person could understand. However, in this life, he unexpectedly had a real family that belonged to him. When June Moxie recognized his new identity, he truly accepted this family. When June Zhantian washed the capital with blood because of him, June Moxie felt that he was completely surrounded by this strong familial love. At this point, the evil June Moxie's heart was no longer lonely. Because he finally had a spiritual support. Family, this was the people that June Moxie cared about the most in this life, and also the faith that he relied on for his whole life. If possible, June Moxie would do everything in his power to make his loved ones live a long and healthy life, and live a happy and peaceful life. He would never allow anyone to destroy this beautiful thing. Once a rootless vagabond obtained a family, no one would think that he would care so much. He would rather give everything and go against the world to protect it to the end. Because of the feeling of being rootless, too bitter. So bitter that life would become meaningless. But the feeling of caring was so warm that he would not hesitate to protect it with his life, wholeheartedly care for it, and do his best to protect it. From the recovery of June Wui's legs, the rise of the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer, Grandpa June's advancement, Guan Qing Han's change, all of these were things that June Moxie had done for his family, step by step. And he must continue to do it, until the shame of this family was completely washed away, until this family stood at the top of the world, and no one dared to look at them. Only the June family could truly look down on the world, and be looked up to by all. That was June Moxie's ultimate goal. June Moxie looked at the gloomy night sky, and finally let out a long sigh of relief. Then, he ordered the guards to withdraw, and everything returned to normal. Then, his body flashed, and disappeared from the bottom of the tower. Tonight, he still had something important to do. The deterrence during the day was not enough, far from enough. If he wanted to completely suppress this storm, he would need at least the heads of a few important figures. Now, some rotten scholars in Tianxiang dared to so brazenly attack the June family. They even dared to bully others. How could they threaten the world? A top family, a super family, if they did not retaliate, how could they establish themselves in the future? Wouldn't that be a joke? June Moxie's trip this time was to deal with these matters. Trying to use honor to attack me? Hee, let's see who cares more about honor. Calling me despicable and shameless, let's see who cares more about honor. Dark clouds covered the sky, and there were no stars and no moon. A moonless, windy night. Murder and arson. Young Master June Moxie didn't intend to set the place on fire. But he wouldn't care if he killed someone if it was necessary. Moreover, what he wanted to do this time might be even more terrifying than killing someone or setting the place on fire. Mei Mansion, old Mei Gaojie was sighing and groaning. The situation had unexpectedly developed to this point. Even old Mei hadn't anticipated that June Moxie, a famous debauchee, would be so unyielding. In fact, he was so unscrupulous. He had dared to disregard the emperor's authority in broad daylight. The only explanation was that he had the strength to defy all laws and the emperor's authority. Or, he had a powerful backer behind him. No matter which one it was, old Mei was not happy to see it. Old Mei had believed that June Moxie should be in fear and trepidation since he had committed such an evil act. Moreover, he should be facing the pressure of public opinion. So, he should tie himself up and go to the capital to beg for forgiveness. Then, he should wait for His Majesty to deal with him. Then, the officials would be furious, and the military would retaliate. Then, His Majesty would make the final decision. He would weaken the June family's influence in Tianxiang even if he didn't eradicate the June family. June Moxie, the main culprit, must die. Even though old Mei had some respect for Guan Qing Han, he couldn't tolerate her. Wouldn't it be the same as slapping his own mouth if he let Guan Qing Han off with such a scandal? Wouldn't it be telling the world that June Moxie was innocent? The adulterer and the adulterer would be punished together. After all, an empire was relying on such a powerful family. So, it wasn't a good thing for the officials to be strong and the emperor to be weak. So, it wasn't normal. And a disaster was bound to happen as time went on. and the June family's June moxie was on the rise. So, this was a heaven-sent opportunity. So, this scandal was a good excuse that couldn't be covered even in 1,000 years. Mei Gao Jie believed that he had guessed the emperor's plan. Therefore, he had put on a tough stance. He had vowed to pull the June family off their high horse. His Majesty's backing was tantamount to having the entire Tianxiang Empire's backing. So, the June family was nothing to be afraid of even if they were strong. Moreover, the June family was on the rise. So, it was the best time to get rid of them. The opportunity was fleeting. So, it would be too late to regret it if it was missed. But, His Majesty's attitude was so ambiguous once the matter got out of hand. Could it be that the unshakable backing I had thought to be useless? Or is there some other reason? And June Moxie's arrogance has reached an appalling level. The matter had gotten out of hand. The 3 scholars had cursed their master on the street, and their so-called scholarly demeanor had vanished without a trace. The world-famous Wenxing Heavenly Literature Institute has been embroiled in such a big scandal. This vicious scandal is even more unbearable than the scandal of June Moxie's sister-in-law. This is even more unbearable. I'm not afraid of unbearable goods, but I'm afraid of comparing goods to goods. Old Mei felt that he had failed as a teacher in comparison to the June family's scandal. I've taught these unbearable disciples. The situation has been turned upside down in just one day. Mei Gao Jie was deeply worried. My old companion, Kong Lingyang, must be feeling very angry, right? Lord Mei is in a good mood. The wind is heavy and the moon is dark. Ghosts are crying everywhere. But Lord Mei is proud and unyielding. He is facing the heavens alone. He, who is standing in the middle of the night under the starry sky. A faint and clear voice was heard along with the wind. The voice was faintly discernible. It seemed to be brimming with a warm smile. However, the wind seemed to have stagnated as this voice sounded, and the world was filled with an indescribable chill. Chapter 448. Erupt. Second Watch. He had spoken these 3 words very slowly. He had paused between each word. But, he had spoken them in a very confident manner. It seemed as if he had anticipated this, and had prepared for it. He had anticipated that June Moxie was the only person who had arrived. Lord Mei is worthy of being called a wise man of this generation. Your foresight is divine. The faint voice behind him sounded like an old friend chatting. It was neither angry nor angry. It was full of patience. This old man is ashamed. How can I dare to live up to the name of a wise man? How can I foresee divine things? The young Master June has informed this old man. Therefore, this old man hasn't slept tonight. He has been waiting for this moment in order to welcome the young Master June's arrival. Mei Gao Jie finally turned around. His old face was calm. However, a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes as he looked at the youngster before him. Is this the same good-for-nothing debauchee that I have in my mind? In front of him, there was an elegant and handsome young man, dressed in a snow-white robe, standing leisurely, facing the boundless night sky, as if riding the wind in the hazy night sky. He was like an immortal from the 9th heaven, descending to the human world. This aloof and arrogant youngster was like a cool breeze. He was smiling in a gentle manner. But that gentle smile of his was emitting a cold and murderous aura. It was even bitingly cold and mournful than the bone-chilling November wind. That gentle youngster didn't have any weapon on his body. In fact, he didn't seem to be wearing the legendary divine sword on his body. But the sharp aura emanating from his body made Mei Gao Jie feel that this youngster was an extremely ferocious and bloodthirsty peerless divine weapon. This youngster was none other than June Moxie. The debauchee of the past had revealed his sharpness for the first time today. He was faintly emitting the aura of an ambitious and ruthless person. June Moxie smiled gently. There wasn't the slightest trace of resentment in his eyes. He strolled over to the stone table, and leisurely poured himself a cup of wine. Then, he raised his cup and saluted. Lord May, I must first offer you a toast before I ask for the reason. Your calmness is worthy of a toast. It's a pity that this wine is of inferior quality. It can't compare with the best wine of my aristocratic hall. It's a pity that there's only one flaw. Mei Gaojia laughed out loud. He raised his cup and drained it in one gulp. Then, his frail and old body suddenly straightened up. He slowly walked back, and sat opposite to June Moxie. Then, he slowly said, "Wine is wine. It's fine as long as it's wine. Why does young Master June care about it? Speaking of today's matter, the arrow is already knocked on the bowstring. Why does young Master June still have doubts in his heart? Now that things have come to this, I will tell you everything I know. However, I would like to ask young Master June. Is this young Master June's first stop?" "Nonsense. I just came from Master Kong's house." June Moxie casually translated from English to Chinese. "I presume that Senior Kong has already returned to heaven, right?" Mei Gaojia sneered. "That's right. Lord Kong's temper is extremely unyielding. He's not very cooperative, and he's also very stubborn. I had no choice but to clench my teeth and stomp my feet. I didn't have the heart to send him to the Yellow Springs Road in a glorious manner. I presume that he's strolling back and forth up there at present. Perhaps he's waiting for someone. Ha ha! That's right. That's right. We two old men have been together for a long time. So, this old man will certainly follow after you. However, I'm very interested to know what it is before I leave. What matter can make a peerless genius like young Master June so obsessed with it?" Mei Gaojia's tone had a hint of ridicule when he had mentioned the word peerless genius. This old scholar had been poor his entire life. However, he had displayed a rare indifference and open-mindedness in the face of life and death. First question. How did Master May know that I would come today? As far as I can remember, I didn't send anyone to inform you of my arrival. June Mo Xie didn't seem to care. He continued to play with the empty cup in his hand, and he spun it nimbly in his hand. His eyes were focused on the cup. It seemed as if he was very interested in this ordinary wine cup. However, he didn't even look at Mei Gaojia. "Young Master June has humiliated my 3 disciples in public. You've made them insult this old man in public. So, this old man knew that you would come. And I will settle this grudge tonight." Mei Gaojia chuckled. "That's because you've already gone to the extreme. Both you and I don't have the slightest path of retreat. This old man would have risked his life tomorrow if you hadn't come today. And I wouldn't have been able to shake your June family. But I'm sure that a considerable number of your subordinates would have suffered a calamity. And those people are under our control at this moment. The young master is very astute. So, it's impossible that you don't know about this matter. The young master doesn't care about their lives. But old Master June Zhantian and Great Marshal Jun Wui will certainly care about them." "That's right." June Moxie nodded slowly. "That's right. But it's not the main reason. I want to see how much you know. Today's matter has revealed that the June family doesn't care about the imperial power. Moreover, they don't fear it. So, it would be meaningless for this old man to report to the emperor if I were to act tomorrow. So, I'll certainly use my strength this time. I won't need to go through the imperial court to deal a heavy blow to your June family. In fact, I won't be able to destroy you. But I'll make you pay a heavy price. In fact, it'll be an unbearable price." He chuckled. "This old man is a civil official. But there are many powerful people in this world who can kill without spilling blood. In fact, they're powerful enough to destroy unrivaled heroes. And we civil officials are deeply rooted in the Tianxiang Imperial Court. So, you won't be able to stop us even if you have great strength. Therefore, your best method and time is to choose to make your move tonight." Moreover, the young master has achieved success at a young age. So, it's time for you to show off your abilities, and the June family's fledgling needs a target to establish its might. And this old man and Kong Ling Yang are undoubtedly the best targets to establish our might. Moreover, I've only known the young master for a short time. But I know that the young master is a vengeful and venomous man. So, you won't wait until tomorrow even if you have the ability to deal with tomorrow's storm. Moreover, the young master has a filial heart even though his conduct is improper. And Jun Tian will undoubtedly suffer the biggest blow if the Jun family's influence suffers. Therefore, you won't allow your grandfather to suffer a blow either. Sigh, this was an important consideration when this old man had drawn up a plan to deal with you. I had wanted to use the pressure of public opinion to force you to submit. But it's a pity that the plans of God supersede the plans of man. Your adaptability may seem overbearing, but it's as powerful as a thunderbolt, and it has successfully disrupted this old man's overall plan. I believe that you would have come here regardless of any of the reasons mentioned above. You would have come here if you hadn't come here. Then you would have gone to Kong Ling Yang's house. Therefore, you would have come here. So, why wouldn't this old man wait here? Lord Mei treats this Jun Moxie with special respect. This junior feels very honored. Jun Moxie nodded in a profound manner. Mei Gao Jie had obviously investigated and analyzed Jun Mo Xie in order to come to this conclusion. Therefore, Jun Moxie had treated me with special respect. Secondly, why didn't Lord Mei make any preparations when he knew that I would come? Lord Mei is a civil minister. But he must have had a lot of suicide warriors under his command. He would have eliminated all future troubles if he could have killed me in one fell swoop. But I didn't find any security when I came to your residence. So, it's obvious that Lord Mei has removed all of them. Why is that? Jun Moxie asked the second question. I mentioned that I've only known the young master for a short time. But I know a lot about him. The young master's actions may seem arrogant and overbearing. In fact, they may even be absurd. But I realize that every step of his is closely linked, and his plans are far-reaching. The young master must have made thorough preparations since he dared to come here. I have a few suicide warriors under my command. But how could they be a match for the Jun family? I'm afraid that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to chat with the young master in that case. Mei Gao Jie smiled wisely. This old man is a scholar who doesn't have the strength to truss a chicken. I've never understood the cultivation of Xian Qi. And I don't know the difference between Tian Xian and Shin Xian. But this old man knows that I'm no match for the Jun family. And this old man is here alone. So, the young master will certainly come and have a chat with me. I had thought that Lord Mei was a rotten scholar. But it seems that you're a wise man. Jun Moxie laughed out loud. Then, he poured 2 cups of wine. Mo Xie would like to offer you another cup for what you've just said. Mei Gao Jie's complexion was calm as he drank the wine. The third question. I, Jun Moxie, have behaved improperly. But that's my own business. It's the Jun family's private business. What does it have to do with you? Besides, you know the truth of this matter. So, why do you insist on putting a bucket of **T on my head? Why do you insist on putting me to death? Jun Moxie couldn't understand this question. It seems that my personal moral corruption has nothing to do with the Tian Xiang Empire's customs, right? Such a far-fetched accusation has provoked the Jun family's thunderous wrath. And it's inviting a fatal disaster. So why bother? I've never been a good person in the past if it's for the livelihood of the common people. But I don't see you standing up for the people of the world. Won't you give me an explanation? This dispute ends with the young master. But it also begins with the young master. Jun Tian and the old master Jun have some old grudges. But this old man isn't unable to tolerate the existence of the Jun family. Moreover, the old Master Jun is a good man for the country and the people. And his son Junwui is also the same. This old man has different political views, and this old man admires this father and son even though they fight on the surface. In fact, this old man wouldn't have impeached them if it had been for them. In fact, I would have done my best to protect them. But this matter has happened because of you. Young Master Jun Moxie. Mei Gao Jielingling smiled. That's because you're the kind of person who doesn't put the common people in your eyes. In fact, you're the kind of person who ignores the world. Jun Moxie, on this point, this old man will definitely not misjudge you. Speaking of which, it's laughable that someone like this old man is actually young Master's confidant. And a person like you is bound to cause endless disasters if you were to inherit the Jun family's enormous power. Even if you turn the entire Tianxiang kingdom upside down, this old man will not doubt it. Therefore, since you've made a name for yourself, it's a sign of danger. He must be strangled to death in time. Otherwise, Tianxiang kingdom will be destroyed in your hands. At present, it is only Tianxiang. If you succeed, it will affect the entire mortal world. You are bound to bring disaster to the world. Chapter 449. Besides, Jun Moxie's suspicions had already been confirmed. So, there was no need to confirm anything. All the suspicions were pointing in the same direction. Jun Moxie only needed an opportunity. Another thing is that you, Jun Moxie, are very dangerous, and the Jun family's strength is strong enough. However, the Jun family's strength has been scattered over the years. The world is at peace, and there aren't many big wars. So, you may not have the opportunity to make contributions even if you want to. At most, you'll become another Jun Zhantian. We can bear it, and we're happy to fight with you like this. Only when the civil and military are balanced can the country be at peace. However, your Jun family's strength has soared since the war with the southern Heaven City. This speed of ascension was simply terrifying. The Jun family's strength would have increased by several folds if you had been fully fledged. Tianxiang's emperor will be neither a subject nor a subject at that time. Mei Gao Jie smiled bitterly. But his face was full of pride as he smiled. This old man is an old minister of Tianxiang. My entire life has been dedicated to the Tianxiang Empire from the time I was a child until now. This old man will never allow the Jun family to shake the foundation of Tianxiang. I will fight with my life even if I have to die. So that's how it is. Jun Moxie narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, "But I haven't done anything. So, why is Master Mei so sure that I will destroy the Tianxiang Empire?" "Young Master, you know this the best. So, why are you asking such a question?" Mei Gao Jie sneered. "Young Master Jun is a peerless genius. Why have you been a debauchee for 10 years? Why have you endured for 10 years if your Xian cultivation is so exquisite? You have pretended to be a fool, destroyed your reputation, and become notorious. So why? Young Master hasn't flown for 10 years. But you've soared to the sky. You haven't cried for 10 years. But when you cry, you've shaken the world. You have no respect for the Emperor. Why? There's another reason for this. The old man says that he knows me well. But he's mistaken about this." Jun Moxie smiled bitterly. This old man's eyesight, talent, and knowledge were indeed unique. However, the previous Mo Xie was a true scum. But ever since his rise, the previous Silk Pants had become a legend in the eyes of the world. Jun Moxie was equivalent to a legend who had endured hardships to gain courage. How ironic! If the original Mo Xie knew about this, he would probably die from shock again even if he became a ghost. This old man can guess a thing or two about young Master's reason. However, this isn't the time to discuss this matter. Mei Gao Jie smiled and waved his hand. "One last question. I'm afraid that just the two of you alone wouldn't be able to stir up such a huge storm. I'm sure there's another expert behind this. Although the two elders were scheming, they were not such despicable people. There must be someone else involved in this matter. If this young master's guess is correct, it should be someone from Shin-Si and Yu Tang, right? Jun Moxie's eyes revealed a sharp glint. You colluded with them to frame the Jun family, a pillar of the imperial court. This is tantamount to treason. Why? I asked you to give me an explanation when I first came here. Can you give me an explanation now? Ha ha ha, treason? This is the most ridiculous thing in the world. Mei Gao Jie laughed heartily. The Jun family, the Dugu family, and the Mu Rong family. We've been preparing our troops for many years, and we'll be able to protect our borders. The Jun family's destruction will cause chaos in Tianxiang at most. Even if the two great empires take advantage of this opportunity to invade Tianxiang, we'll be able to withstand it with our many years of accumulation. In fact, we won't be able to change dynasties even if we're defeated. But you, Jun Moxie, can't avoid such a rebellious matter if you're fully fledged. The survival of Tianxiang and this temporary chaos, it's obvious which is more important. So, there's no need to ask which choice we'll make. Elder Mei, please pay attention. Jun Moxie Lingling looked at this old man. His eyes couldn't hide his biting cold. Your inference may be reasonable, but it's only an inference. It's two different things from the truth, and you've used such an inference to harm the Jun family. You've hurt the Empire's former protector. Don't you think that you've gone too far? Have you ever thought about how many people will die because of your unproven inference? Perhaps you have a grudge against the Jun family, or perhaps you don't like me. But these things can't cover up the fact that you've distorted the truth to attack us. And your inference is only your own opinion. You don't have any evidence. Most importantly, you've insulted a good woman who didn't hesitate to sacrifice her innocence to repay a debt of gratitude. And you clearly know that she's innocent. She has nothing to do with this matter. You clearly know that this woman lost her chastity because of me, Jun Moxie. But she's still as pure as ever. And you also know that my third uncle adopted her as his daughter. She's no longer the daughter-in-law of the Jun family. She's no longer the sister-in-law of Jun Moxie. But you've still clung to her original identity in the midst of your attacks. And you've still done so. So, I want to ask, are a woman's reputation and happiness something that can be abandoned, trampled, and used at will in the eyes of great scholars like you? Are you willing to sacrifice anyone in your eyes to achieve your goals? I want to know, what is the righteousness that you great scholars have always advocated? Jun Moxie's tone was as biting cold as a knife as he continued to ask questions. Mei Gao Jie raised his head arrogantly. However, he wasn't willing to back down. This kind of thing is very common. And I don't care to explain it. But I'll make an exception since young Master Jun has asked. She's only a woman. But even a princess of the kingdom must be prepared to sacrifice herself for the country in this cruel political struggle. Sacrificing a woman in exchange for the peace of the world is a very worthwhile thing. Great profit without any capital. Why not? So what if she's innocent? She's only a woman, that's all. Your Excellency Mei, don't you think that these words of yours are very shameless? Jun Moxie sneered. What if it was your own daughter? What if it was your wife? Would you have done the same? Yes, this is how it should be. It's a matter of heaven and earth. This old man doesn't have anything to be reluctant about. Sacrificing one's life for the country is an honor for them. This old man wouldn't hesitate to put righteousness before family if Guan Qing Han were my daughter. In fact, I would even punish her with my own hands. Mei Gao Jie raised his head arrogantly. His words were resolute and decisive. He didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation. In fact, he was proud of sacrificing his life. Jun Moxie was so angry that he started to laugh. He finally understood that his thoughts and the thoughts of these great Confucian scholars were actually completely different. Perhaps this old man could argue with him on this issue for a year, and he would still be able to speak with justice and conviction. Then, let me ask you, did you feel a little bit guilty when you did this? Jun Moxie suppressed his churning blood and chi. What a joke. This matter is a matter of heaven and earth. What's the point of feeling guilty? Women are like clothes. What's wrong with throwing them away? Mei Gao Jia looked at Jun Moxie with extreme disdain. I thought that you were a man of character. But I hadn't expected that you would be so sentimental. Jun Moxie, this old man will warn you before I die. A woman's beauty is not related to a great plan. A hero's greatest taboo is sentimentality. Don't let this old man look down on you. It's my fault. What you said just now had given me the illusion that I was a close friend. I shouldn't have told you about this matter. Jun Moxie retreated in defeat. He shook his head and laughed. I've never been sentimental. But even the country can't touch my people. Sir Mei, this is another reason why I've come to find you today. And this reason is something that you'll never be able to imagine. Mei Gao Jia, you have a belly full of righteousness, but a person like you will never understand the perseverance of a man. Therefore, you may succeed in politics, but you'll never become a man. Frankly speaking, you're a surrendering party in my eyes. And that includes your disciples. Not to mention those who didn't enter the imperial court. Those who did are all shameless and unscrupulous people. Nonsense. Mei Gao Jie became angry. He had students all over the world. This was Mei Gao Jie's greatest achievement. He was also his greatest pride. Seeing his disciples all over the world was his greatest comfort. No matter what Jun Emosia said to him, he wouldn't be moved. He would just laugh it off. But now that this matter had been brought up, it had triggered his reverse scale. This white-haired old man instantly became as agitated as a fighting cock. Which one of my disciples isn't a pillar of the empire? 19 of them have become the empire's feudal officials. They've brought grace to the 4 seas, and they've brought prosperity to the people. They've become the empire's pillars. Jun Moxie, you're just a good-for-nothing. What qualifications do you have to talk about my disciples? They're the empire's outstanding talents. The old man stood up. His face was flushed with excitement. His fingers were also trembling. Sit down. Old man, why are you so excited? This young master has overestimated your disciples by saying that they're trash. Trash can be recycled and reused. They don't even have this value. Jun Moxie sneered. He turned his palm over. Mei Gao Jie, open your old eyes wide. Take a good look at the political achievements of your disciples. They've brought prosperity to the 4 seas. A thin booklet appeared in his hand, and he threw it towards Mei Gao Jie. Mei Gao Jie was startled as soon as he received it. He suspiciously looked at Jun Moxie. Then, he slowly read it. On it, it really was the glorious achievements of his disciples. A certain year, month, and day, a certain disciple used his authority to bully a certain wealthy merchant. He demanded a certain amount of bribes. A certain day, he forcefully took the daughter of that merchant as a concubine. He hounded her parents to death. Then, this disciple had violated the law. There were a great number of incidents. There were no less than dozens of them. And each and every one of these incidents was well documented. There were witnesses and material evidence. There was no doubt about it. Then, there was another incident. Every incident had a clear date of investigation. But the date of the investigation was different as well. Some pages had yellowed, and the edges of the pages had curled up. These pieces of evidence were hard to refute. Perhaps it wouldn't be enough to sentence these guys to death by dismemberment 100 times if they were to be punished in accordance with these incidents. Mei Gao Jie flipped through several pages. Then, his hand trembled, and the booklet fell on the table with a clatter. Chapter 450. Erupt. The fourth chapter. Tears streamed down Mei Gao Jie's face at this moment. The old man felt ashamed under Jun Mo Xie's knife-like gaze of disdain. This is the disciple that I've painstakingly trained. This is the pillar that I've cultivated for the empire. But what's the difference between this and the so-called corrupt officials? What's the difference between this and the vermin of the nation? Mei Gao Jie stared blankly in silence. Mei Gao Jie, this is the disciple that you've painstakingly trained for so many years. You think of them as the pillars of the empire. However, these are only a small part of them. You've been in charge of the Wenxing Heavenly Institute for decades. How many disciples have you taught? Mei Gao Jie, you've always stood at the highest point of morality. You don't think that you're stuck in the filth of the world. But you've come to accuse me of bringing disaster to Tianxiang. Why don't you open your eyes and see clearly who's bringing disaster to Tianxiang? The destruction that you've caused is thousands of times greater than mine. It's tens of thousands of times greater. Mei Gao Jie, let me ask you, what qualifications do you have to accuse me? Even if you accuse me of rebelling, I still need troops, right? Dare I ask where these troops came from? Wasn't it all because your disciples forced the people to rebel against the government? Mei Gao Jie, you'll be my biggest accomplice if I rebel. You'll be my biggest help and my most hidden accomplice. Do you agree with what I've said? Great sage Mei. Jun Moxie chuckled. I wouldn't have known if I hadn't said it. But it turns out that we're one family, the same group of people. When a crow meets an old crow, no one can say that they're very clean. Am I right or not? Mei Gao Jie staggered 2 steps back. His calm face had long since vanished. His complexion had turned deathly pale like dead ashes. Mei Gao Jie. Master Mei. Mr. Wise. You keep on saying that you've cultivated the pillars of the empire for decades. But do you see what kind of trash you've nurtured today? They're nothing more than millions of vermin that will bring disaster to the nation. Ha ha ha, this is ridiculous. Look at the place where you live. What's the difference between you and a beggar? But do you think you can make up for the sins you have committed by remaining uncorrupted? No. This was simply too many to count. If you say that I bring disaster to the world, then what about you? I really can't think of any adjectives to describe it. Perhaps you can give yourself an explanation. Jun Moxie's words became sharper and sharper. At this moment, Jun Dashao's true purpose finally revealed itself. The purpose of Jun Moxie's visit was to catch all these hypocrites in one fell swoop. However, Jun Moxie's investigation was only the tip of the iceberg. Even if the Wenxing Heavenly Literature Institute had 2,000 students graduating every year for the past 50 years, there would still be more than 100,000 graduates. 100,000 people were like an incomparably huge net, entrenched in the entire Tianxiang Empire. These people were definitely an extremely large force. Even if only a small portion of them were in high positions, they could definitely cause great losses. Jun Moxie was not a good person. If these people hadn't offended him, then Jun Moxie would have been too lazy to care about them. At most, he would have extended his hand whenever he'd come across these injustices. However, the Confucian world had taken the initiative to attack him. This had made Jun Moxie anxious. Therefore, Jun Moxie's first step was to thoroughly eliminate these scum of the world. If 10,000 people blocked his way, then he would kill 10,000. If 100,000 people blocked his way, then he would kill 100,000. Jun Moxie wouldn't be lenient towards such people. So what if he had to kill 100,000 people? I'm an assassin, but my heart is filled with a myriad of colors. I don't seek justice, but I only want justice. It doesn't matter who it is, justice. The human world can't give, the law can't give, but I will give. All of these were the beliefs of the evil monarch. Lord Mei, have you calculated the huge losses you've caused for the empire? Did you think that I was insulting you when I instigated the so-called 3 great scholars to insult you? I was only using their mouths to scold you to wake you up. I wanted to make you realize your error. But it's a pity that you refuse to realize your error. You keep saying that you're doing this for the sake of the Tianxiang Empire. So, let me ask you, how will you face the sins you've caused? Do you want to atone for these sins? Jun Moxie's voice was somewhat sinister. I made my students insult my teacher in public. Then, I made my teacher sell out his students. You should thank me, be grateful, and worship me. But I'd like to see how sanctimonious hypocrites like you can establish a foothold in this world after your true colors have been exposed. Jun Moxie fiercely thought. Atone for my sins? Mei Gao Jie's cloudy eyes lit up. It seemed as if he had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. Can my great sins really be atoned for? No. Some sins can't be redeemed. But the ones that can be redeemed can still be remedied. I believe that Lord Mei can do his best to reduce the sins that can be redeemed. Jun Moxie was like an old witch tempting Little Red Riding Hood as he spoke in a patient and systematic manner. Ha ha! Jun Moxie, I understand your true intentions. You want to use this old man's hand to eradicate my students. And you want the Confucian faction to never have a foothold in Tianxiang. I understand your intentions. But this matter has arisen because of me. This old man may be innocent, but I still have a loyal heart. Since I've brought disaster to the human world, how can I not find a way to eliminate it? I'm perfectly aware that you're using me. But I'm willing to do so. Mei Gao Jie smiled bitterly. He frowned and said, The heavens have pity on me. I'm an old horse that has lost its way. But I've finally woken up. So I should give an explanation for everything that I've done. But the Confucian faction can't be destroyed. Even if Tianxiang ends, it's bound to have a new atmosphere. This old man will be a heartless teacher this time. But what about it? Mei Gao Jie's body suddenly trembled as he said this, and tears streamed down his face. The old man thought of the students that he had personally taught. They had grown from ordinary youngsters to famous talents of their generation. Then, they had embarked on an official career. They had become high-ranking officials. Perhaps they had even become officials of a county or a city. He had poured his life's blood, sweat, and tears. But his endless expectations had turned into bubbles. He had painstakingly planned to establish the Wenxing Heavenly Literature Institute. He wanted to leave his name in the annals of history. He wanted to leave his name in the annals of history. But he had left his name in the annals of history. But he had left behind an infamy that would last for thousands of years. Could it be that he had made a mistake? Mr. Mei, your starting point wasn't wrong. And no one can criticize your original intention. But you've overlooked the greed of human nature. Jun Moxie seemed to have seen through his thoughts. So, he straightly dispelled his doubts. It's true that one must have the ability. But morality is even more important. The more powerful a person is, the more disasters he can bring upon himself. Your Wenxing Heavenly Literature Institute boasts of righteousness every day. But it's only spoken on the lips. And it's turned into a slogan. But it hasn't formed true righteousness in the hearts of the people of the Institute. So, the so-called righteousness has become a sharp weapon for you to attack others. You've done evil deeds in a righteous and self-righteous manner. Jun Moxie chuckled and said, You must know that it's not difficult to find a dignified reason for a heinous crime even if it's done. But it's an easy task for scholars like you who have read a lot of books. And you've become more and more self-righteous in this manner. And you can well imagine the consequences of doing so in the long run. A man must first be upright in his heart. And to educate a man must first be virtuous. Jun Moxie said, This is the true meaning of education. A man must first be upright in his heart. And to educate a man must first be virtuous. These two sentences exploded in Mei Gao Jie's mind like a morning bell. Suddenly, he seemed to understand a lot of things. Then, he turned around and entered his room. Soon, he came out with a thick name list. The name list was marked in great detail. Since the establishment of the Wenxing Heavenly Literature Institute, the first batch of students had entered the official career, when they had taken up their posts, when they had been transferred, the process, and what they were doing at the moment. Every one of them knew it very clearly. This was Mei Gaojie's greatest pride and achievement. It was also something that he had often taken out to show off. But it had now become a life-threatening talisman for the student. June Moxie, it doesn't matter whether you're good or bad. It doesn't matter whether you're doing this for justice or for personal enmity. But this old man believes you because of what you've just said about the true meaning of education. But please get rid of these black sheep. This old man owes you a favor. I'll certainly repay you in my next life. Mei Gaojie's complexion turned serious. He suddenly shouted in a stern voice, "But you must investigate this matter thoroughly. You mustn't kill the innocent for the sake of my students. Otherwise, this old man won't let you off even if I become a ghost." June Moxie snorted and said, "I've never considered myself a good person. But I'm much more conscientious than you guys. I won't be able to sleep peacefully if I accidentally kill a good person. What's the point of living if I can't even sleep peacefully?" Mei Gaojie burst into loud laughter. His voice was mournful as he suddenly muttered, "Sleep peacefully? Good, 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 good. This old man has taught hundreds of thousands of students. But it's only today that I understand the true meaning of the word education. This old man hates it. Why did I turn a deaf ear to these words? Snort disdainfully? Ha ha ha. I wanted to leave my name in the annals of history. But I didn't expect to leave my name in infamy for 10,000 years. This old man hates it very much. I hate it very much. I'm the only one in the world who would do such a ridiculous thing by borrowing the hands of my enemies. Ha ha ha. He laughed twice. Then, he suddenly retreated 2 steps and rushed forward. June Moxie sighed and dodged to the side. Bang! Mei Gaojie's old head hit the stone table. His brains burst open and he died a violent death. His eyes were wide open on his white-haired old face. They were firmly looking at the dusky sky. One could faintly see that his eyes were brimming with shame. Mei Gaojie, if I say that you're righteous, then you're hopelessly pedantic. If I say that you're muddle-headed, then you can clearly distinguish right from wrong. You deserve to die, but you don't deserve to die. But you've offended me. You don't deserve to die. You deserve to die. Chapter 451. I'm sorry for the late update. I won't talk about the reason, because no matter what the reason is, it won't cover up the fact that I'm late. I'll make it up to you today, and then I'll explain everything to you and ask for your forgiveness. I'm sorry brothers and sisters, I've kept you waiting. That night Tianxiang was bathed in blood. This was another bloody night after the previous one, and the level of slaughter this time was even greater than the previous one. This night was destined to be a sleepless one. The next day, Jun Moxie had forcefully entered the city. Then, the 3 great scholars had insulted their master in public. This explosive news had spread like wildfire throughout the city. The previous shocking news hadn't even subsided yet. Then, the Meng family's 70 businesses in the Tianxiang city had been attacked at the same time. This news was even more shocking than the previous one. At the same time, Marshal Jun Zhantian issued an order. All garrison troops are to await further orders, and those who disobey will be executed. Not long after, another marshal, Duge Zongheng, issued an order. None of the troops are to act rashly, and not a single soldier is to enter or leave the barracks. Those who disobey will be executed without mercy. Almost in the blink of an eye, the Murong clan gathered all their members who were outside and returned to their homes at lightning speed. The Li family remained silent, and didn't say a word. As for the other Tianxiang families, they also chose to wait and see. After that, the imperial palace issued an edict. All imperial guards are not to leave their posts, and must await the imperial edict. This was tantamount to saying that the current Tianxiang city, under the influence of the imperial family, had become a forbidden zone that was ruled by a single power, a forbidden zone that belonged to the Jun family. Groups of warriors belonging to the Jun family unscrupulously broke into the Meng family's businesses, and all of the Meng family's management personnel were ruthlessly expelled. Anyone who resisted was beaten up, and many of them had their arms and legs broken, and even lost their lives because of this. In short, all of the Meng family's external forces within the city were completely wiped out in a single day. Apart from the Jun family, the military, and the Dugu family had also joined in. For a moment, Tianxiang city was in a state of chaos, and everyone was in a state of panic. Jun Moxie went on a killing spree on the street. Blood flowed everywhere. Miserable cries rang out from the flagpole until it was completely extinguished. This shock had yet to subside, and then such a shocking thing happened. Following which, before nightfall, they discovered the minced corpses of the 3 scholars who had escaped at the city gates. This was the so-called counterattack from those hypocrites, but that was all. Because then, a large number of officials were suddenly killed in the dark of the night. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights, Zhao Qingjun, was bent over his desk, writing at a rapid speed. He was writing a memorial to the Jun family. He was prepared to face the emperor tomorrow and bring the Jun family down no matter what. Assistant Minister Zhao was very confident at this moment. Under the strong leadership of the 2 teachers, the strength of the Wenxing Heavenly Literature Institute had been completely mobilized. In addition, these people had formed a huge network of relationships over the years. So, they were an exceptionally powerful force. More than 300 officials, both inside and outside the capital, had signed a joint petition to impeach the Jun family. How spectacular would that be? I believe that even the emperor wouldn't be able to take it lightly. Your Jun family may be in control of the Tianxiang army, but you're still just a family. Can you fight against the entire Tianxiang civil court system? Even if that little thief from the Jun family went crazy and killed people in an attempt to scare them off, so what? It was just a reckless act of a brave man. Humph, the bigger the mess he makes, the better. The more people he kills, the better. That way, there will be no room for turning the situation around. The Jun family will also be forced into a dead end, and will be consigned to eternal damnation. Junimo Xie, go ahead and mess around, go ahead and mess around. So what if you make trouble? If the emperor wants you dead, then you must die. But we have enough power to sway the emperor's opinion. We can absolutely use the emperor to put you to death, and the entire Jun family to death. One imperial edict is enough to consign you to eternal damnation. The Jun family is bound to be destroyed. Therefore, Assistant Minister Zhao had to stay up all night to produce a well-written and well-organized attack on the Jun family. This would be a sharp weapon for tomorrow's Imperial Hall. It was finally done. Assistant Minister Zhao let out a long sigh, and couldn't help but recite it in a soft voice. The more he recited, the more agitated he became. It seemed as if His Majesty was standing right in front of him. This article was truly brilliant. It had made the Jun family, the protector of Tianxiang, look like they had no good points at all. In fact, it seemed as if the extermination of their entire family wasn't enough. As for the main culprits, Jun Moxie and Guan Qinghan, they had no sense of shame at all. Saying that the men were thieves and the women were prostitutes was the most polite way to put it. The men were despicable, and the women were lowly. They had no sense of propriety or shame. If they were allowed to live in this world, then they would be letting the emperor down, letting the people down, letting Tianxiang down, and letting the world down. In short, even 10,000 deaths wouldn't be enough to atone for their crimes. Good article. This is the best article this official has ever written in this life. I'm afraid that I won't be able to produce such a good article in the future. Assistant Minister Zhao read the article to his heart's content, and sighed with satisfaction. He felt very good about himself as he shook his head. He felt that this was the first time he had produced such a good article ever since he had left the Wenqing Heavenly Literature Institute. Sharp words like this, but it seemed to be filled with the most concrete evidence. However, it was completely empty. Moreover, it could still kill someone. It was truly rare to see an article like this. It is indeed a good article. Just as Assistant Minister Zhao was praising himself, a sudden sigh came from behind him. Not bad. Assistant Minister Zhao nodded proudly. Then, he was suddenly shocked. Who is it? The article is really good. However, the person is not that good either. However, there is one thing that you are right about. You definitely won't be able to produce such a good article in the future, because you won't have the chance anymore. Zhao Qingjun, a person like you, where in this world can you display your outstanding talent? You should go to hell. That place is more suitable for you. As he spoke softly, a white-clothed youth slowly walked in front of Zhao Qingjun. He grabbed the memorial and unfolded it in the wind. Suddenly, with a whoosh, the memorial turned into dust and scattered in all directions. Then, this youth's cold, lightning-like gaze stared coldly at Zhao Qingjun's face, like two sharp blades that had condensed into solid form. Jun Moxie? How did you get in? Under the tyrant young master's sharp gaze, Zhao Qingjun stood up in extreme panic and shouted in a panic, "Someone come! Someone come!" However, his voice was completely unable to be transmitted out for some unknown reason. Even he himself felt that his voice was extremely weak. If he didn't know what he was shouting, he might not even be able to hear it. Jun Moxie smiled cruelly. He suddenly stretched out a hand and grabbed Zhao Qingjun's neck. Just like that, he lifted Zhao Qingjun's feet off the ground. At this moment, Assistant Minister Zhao was terrified to the extreme, but he could not make any sound, much less speak a complete sentence. The air in his lungs had already been cut off. His entire face instantly flushed red, his two legs kicking weakly in the air, and a pitiful light shot out from his eyes. He wanted to beg for mercy, but he still could not utter a single word. You want to harm me? Jun Moxie's calm eyes were like two deep little ponds as he looked at Zhao Qingjun's face. If you only wanted to target me, I might not care too much. But since you actually want to harm my family, then you must die. Jun Moxie increased the strength in his hand a little more. The bones in Zhao Qingjun's neck cracked, and his tongue stuck out. It hung so long that it almost reached his chest. Zhao Qingjun's expression could be said to be extremely pitiful. You still want to harm my woman, and you even use such a vicious method. Jun Moxie exerted more force. He did not have the slightest bit of pity in his heart, and his eyes were as calm as ever. But Zhao Qingjun's neck gave off a crisp sound. It was broken. To be able to turn merit into fault, right into wrong and black into white, it is truly an impressive ability. Therefore, you sanctimonious hypocrites really deserve to die. Jun Moxie let go, and Zhao Qingjun's body fell to the ground with a bang. His limbs twitched a few times, and then there was no sound. He was already dead, but his eyes were still wide open. They were filled with fear and disbelief. You still dare to die with remaining grievances? Jun Moxie wiped his hands, and put down the towel in an elegant posture. Then, he took a step forward. With this step, he stepped on the face of Zhao Qingjun's corpse that had fallen to the ground, and then he disappeared without a trace. After he disappeared, Zhao Qingjun's eyeballs suddenly exploded with two loud popping sounds. A piece of white paper that was full of words floated in from outside the door. It was gently pasted on Zhao Qingjun's badly mutilated face, and covered this extremely cruel scene. The white shadow was like a ghost, and it flashed in and out of many places in the Tianxiang city like a lightning bolt. One or more officials would perish in every place. Their deaths were too horrible to look at. Almost 80% of the officials who came out of the Wenxing Heavenly Institute had been slaughtered. In just one night, the death toll had already exceeded 30. Some of these people lived in the eastern part of the city, and some lived in the western part of the city. They weren't close to each other, but they weren't gathered in one place either. However, all of them had been killed in one night. According to the speculations of those who were observant, the assassin organization had to have dispatched at least 10 top-notch assassins at the same time tonight in order to achieve such a shocking result. Whether it was the court officials or the officials of the capital, which one of them wasn't under strict protection. However, even if they were under strict protection, they were still killed in silence. Moreover, they didn't make any sound, and didn't leave any trace. There were even a few officials who were killed in their sleep. But the people who were sleeping next to them didn't even realize it. They woke up the next day and realized that they had been hugging a dead man for the entire night. The expression on the dead man's face clearly indicated that he had been greatly frightened, or perhaps he had been tortured. However, he hadn't realized it even though he was right next to him. This kind of assassin, this kind of killing method, was really rare and shocking. However, there was one thing that these dead people had in common. Each of them had a piece of paper on top of their bodies. The reason for their death was explained clearly on the paper. Every single one of them had committed a heinous crime. Their blood and tears were written on the paper, and the evidence of their crimes was conclusive. Countless people in the Tianxiang city had spontaneously lit up firecrackers after the news of these officials' deaths had spread. For a time, it seemed as if they were celebrating the new year. Many people burned incense and prayed, and kowtowed to the heavens as tears streamed down their cheek. However, it was almost the end of the year. So, everyone had a place to buy firecrackers and candles. If it had been any other time, then it wouldn't have been an easy matter to buy such a large number of firecrackers. However, the firecrackers in the Tianxiang city had suddenly become expensive. These people who were celebrating and praying were the people who had been persecuted by these officials. In the past, they had pleaded in many ways, but there was no way out. But now, the heavens had finally opened their eyes. Good will be rewarded, and evil will be repaid in the end. Although they didn't know which great hero had done this, but this nameless hero had undoubtedly become the benefactor of the Tianxiang city, and had given birth to tens of thousands of people. Countless families had raised the memorial tablet of this nameless benefactor. Most people had speculated that this matter had been done by the Jun family. After all, these people had spared no effort to uproot the Jun family with the help of Jun Moxie and Guan Qinghan. They were the absolute main forces of the imperial court. Perhaps this was the revenge of the Jun family. However, these thoughts were kept in the hearts of everyone. Moreover, no one dared to say it out loud. The people who had received kindness couldn't repay it. So, they could only raise the memorial tablet of their nameless benefactor. In the early hours of the morning, Jun Moxie appeared in front of the gate of the Jun family's residence. He was wearing a snow-white robe, and had a faint smile on his face. His entire body was strangely warm. Although his eyes were sharp, they were calm. His sword was hanging at his waist, and his entire body was spotless. In fact, he looked like a young man who had gone out for a morning stroll. He was exercising, and had leisurely returned after admiring the flowers. However, no one could have imagined that this gentle, and handsome young man was the executioner who had just slaughtered the entire Tianxiang city. In fact, he had taken the lives of more than 30 high-ranking officials. The sword hanging at his waist was as clear as water. However, it had already drunk its fill of the blood of corrupt officials. The Wenxing Heavenly Literature Institute had been working hard for the past few decades. So, how could they have climbed to such a high position in the capital? Moreover, it was unknown how much effort they had expended in order to successfully blend into this circle. But now, everything had been destroyed by Da Xiao's sword. Da Xiao could have arranged for his subordinates to carry out these tasks. However, Jun Moxie hadn't carried out such an assassination mission in a long time. It could be said that his hands were itching for action. Therefore, he decided to do it himself. He wanted to send these vermin to hell. Although this was for the sake of the Jun family's affairs, but this feeling of getting rid of evil for the sake of the people made Jun Moxie very happy. This was a kind of spiritual comfort and the redemption of his conscience. Although the entire process had been full of bloody killings, Da Xiao didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt. On the contrary, there was a feeling of justice is on my sword, and justice is in my hands. This was a feeling of being in control of good and evil, rewards and punishments. To outsiders, this was a cruel and bloodthirsty act. However, Jun Moxie wasn't aware of this. Outsiders can say whatever they want. What does it have to do with me? I have a clear conscience in my actions. Justice is in my heart, even in the face of justice. Jun Wui stood in front of his small courtyard, smiling as he looked at him. Ever since Jun Wui had beaten up Xiao Han in front of the army, he could no longer hide the fact that he had recovered from his disability. Third Master Jun had finally gotten rid of the wheelchair. Therefore, he had been standing for the past few days. He even wished that he could sleep standing. Those who had never been disabled would never be able to experience the blissful feeling of supporting their own body with their own 2 feet. This was simply a type of super enjoyment. When I stood up, I was so excited that I kept standing in a military posture. Damn, I finally have legs again. From 3 legs to 2 legs, and now I've finally changed back. Moreover, Jun Wuyi's sudden rise to power was a trivial matter in comparison to the Jun family's sudden rise to prominence. In fact, the crime of deceiving the emperor had been left unsettled. Is it done? Was it very satisfying? Jun Wuyi asked. It was very satisfying. However, I couldn't kill them. I didn't feel satisfied. Jun Moxie smiled mischievously. Seeing that Jun Wuyi was about to start lecturing him again, he quickly slipped into his own courtyard, leaving behind a few words. I haven't slept for a whole night. I'm really tired. I'm going to sleep now, third uncle. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow? It's only early in the morning, and you want to see me tomorrow? Jun Wui was about to reprimand him, but he shut his mouth. He smiled helplessly. My nephew has grown up. Moreover, his martial arts are unpredictable. He has a sense of propriety. I might as well let him do as he pleases. At the same time, on the same night below the snowy peak, there was a fierce battle. It was an extremely tragic battle. One side was the third elder and the others who had just returned from thousands of miles away. On the other side was the Silver Blizzard City's great elder, Xiao Xingyun, and a large group of experts. The people of the Silver Blizzard City had traveled thousands of miles back. The atmosphere on the way back was extremely heavy. They had brought along 3 people who were half dead. These 3 people were originally from the Silver City, but they had now become traitors. Such a strong contrast made even the third elder, who had lived for 70 or 80 years, unable to bear it. 2 of them were old brothers who had grown up with him. Although there had been friction over the years, and although they had fought and schemed against each other, they had still been through thick and thin for 80 years. Old brothers of 80 years. One belonged to the Silver City's Han family, while the other belonged to the Xiao family. However, even if they were sworn enemies, they should have developed some subtle feelings for each other after 80 years of living together. In other words, they should have developed a feeling of dependence. Even if it wasn't friendship, seeing him reduced to a half-dead and crippled state after 80 years of living together would still make one's heart ache. But why did they betray him? Wouldn't it be good if they maintained this way? Wouldn't it be good if everyone was wholeheartedly working for the Silver City? Whether the Silver City was in the hands of the Han family or the Shao family, wasn't it still the Silver City? Who in the world didn't know that the Silver Blizzard City's Han family and the Shao family were one family? It was only the title of the city lord. Was it really that important? Could it be that the Shao family could change its name after taking over the Silver City? This wasn't a change of dynasty. Chapter 452. The first chapter will be released immediately. The next chapter will be released immediately. The third elder and the others were very sad, angry, and puzzled. The 7 swords, the third elder, and the others finally arrived at the snowy peak after a long and arduous journey. They would arrive at the snowy peak of the Silver City as soon as they crossed over it. However, it was extremely cold here, and the sky was filled with snow and wind. However, the people of the Silver City were accustomed to the cold. In fact, they were even more accustomed to such harsh weather. After all, they had grown up in such an environment. The others weren't afraid of the cold, but those who were seriously injured couldn't. They knew that those 3 were traitors of the Silver City, but they still tried their best to take care of them after the first few days of anger, so that their injuries wouldn't worsen. After all, humans were sentimental creatures. Mu Shuetong had once asked if they should send back a messenger eagle to inform the higher-ups of the Silver City. However, the third elder firmly rejected this proposal after some thought. The reason for this was none other than the fact that the Silver Blizzard City's intelligence system was under the control of the Shao family. And this situation had become even more obvious since the birth of the little princess, Han Yenmeng, in the past few years. He had always thought that the Shao family and the Han family were one big family. So, he didn't think much of it. But now, it seemed that the Shao family had already planned this. He hadn't paid any attention to it before, but now, he felt his hair stand on end. The Shao family would get their hands on the news if they sent back a messenger eagle. And the Han family would become passive if that happened. Therefore, the experienced and prudent third elder chose to play it safe, and rushed back to the Silver City through the night. The city lord and the old city lord would be in charge of everything as long as they appeared at the gates of the Silver City. However, he hadn't expected that they would be intercepted by the great elder, Shao Xingyun, and a large number of experts as soon as they arrived at the snowy peak. He had sealed it off so strictly, so how did he get the news? Big brother? What are you doing here? The third elder looked at Shao Xingyun in surprise. He wasn't feigning civility. He knew that his big brother had ulterior motives. But, he had been his big brother for 80 years. It wasn't easy to change this form of address after seeing him in person. Even though he had cursed thousands of times on the way here, he still couldn't accept such a cruel outcome when he saw that familiar face. Big brother? Ha 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 ha, you still have the face to call me big brother? Shao Xingyun's face was overcast as he looked at Chu Yang. It seemed as if he wanted to swallow Chu Yang whole. You killed my second brother. You killed my grandson. You killed my great-grandson. You even crippled my 200-year-old brothers for the rest of their lives. You. Now that things have come to this, you still have the face to call me big brother? You have the nerve to call me that? This old man is embarrassed to agree. This old man can't afford to call you big brother. Shao Xingyun sneered. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. Han Feiyun, you're really bold. The Silver Blizzard City's greatest taboo is internal strife. Yet, you've wantonly slaughtered your fellow disciples and committed all sorts of crimes. Why don't you kneel down and admit your guilt? What are you waiting for? Ha ha ha. Shao Xingyun, I won't call you big brother if you say that I don't deserve to call you big brother. Everyone is well aware of the situation. So, why must you distort the truth? I'd like to ask you to ask yourself, do you still deserve to be called big brother by me? The third elder, Han Feiyun, laughed mournfully. The beard on his old face trembled, and his eyes slowly turned red. Shao Xingyun, I didn't expect you to commit such a treacherous act. You've betrayed the Silver Blizzard City. You've been arrogant. You've even tried to take over the City Lord's position. This is the true ambition of a wolf. Treachery? Ha ha. Xiao Xingyun laughed insolently. You're saying that I'm treacherous? Everyone knows who the first City Lord of the Silver Blizzard City was. Han Feiyun, let me tell you that it was my Xiao family's ancestor. Why did my Xiao family's ancestor die? It was because of your Han family. My ancestor founded the Silver Blizzard City. He carried it forward step by step. Finally, he died for them. And there were already descendants of my Xiao family in this world at that time. The son inherits his father's legacy. This is a principle that hasn't changed for thousands of years. Han Feiyun, let me ask you this. If the old City Lord of the Silver Blizzard City had passed away, wouldn't the young City Lord, Han Zhanmeng, have succeeded to the position? Xiao Xingyun asked in a sinister manner. The third elder was at a loss for words. Everyone had their reasons. But the Han family's actions at that time were also justified if one were to say that the Han family had acted improperly. However, the Han family hadn't done anything wrong to the Xiao family. Even though they knew that the Xiao family had used the name of the Silver Blizzard City to commit evil deeds, they didn't do anything about it. In fact, they had even erased their conscience to help the Xiao family. And this guilt had greatly fueled the Xiao family's arrogance. However, the descendants of the Han family had been taught by their ancestors to tolerate the people of the Xiao family. Therefore, Xiao Han's matter had caused such a huge disturbance. What's wrong? Are you speechless? The Han family would have supported the Xiao family's successor to the position of City Lord if they'd truly cared about our benefactor and friendship. Then, they would have done their best to assist him. This is the proper course of action for a benefactor. But, the Han family only gave an illusory bullshit oath from the beginning. Then, they shamelessly usurped the position of City Lord in front of all the heroes of the world. The original young City Lord had become a mere disciple of the Silver Blizzard City. And the Han family had become the City Lord of the Silver Blizzard City. As the saying goes, one must repay the kindness of a drop of water with a fountain of water. And the Han family had immediately usurped the property of their benefactor's descendant after they'd received the kindness of their benefactor. Ha ha ha, they'd usurped someone else's property, and had done it in such a righteous and benevolent manner. In fact, they'd even received the praise of all the people in the world. Han Feiyun, don't you think it's very funny? Why aren't you speaking? Xiao Xingyun's attitude became increasingly arrogant when he saw that the third elder wasn't replying. You're the one who's talking nonsense. The Supreme Union had been destroyed, and all the heroes of the world had been vying for supremacy. The Silver Blizzard City had suffered many unforeseen events, and was on the verge of destruction. So, it would have been in danger of being swallowed up by other forces if they hadn't been able to make a clear order to rule the world. The Han family had bravely taken over the Silver Blizzard City. Then, they'd slowly built up the foundation of the Silver Blizzard City. And the Han family had always been at the forefront in every battle. And they'd always been in the safest position in order to protect the Xiao family. Can you deny that? Moreover, the Silver Blizzard City had only been a medium-sized force in the world at that time. It couldn't have been considered as a superpower like it is today. The old City Lord had only picked up a hot potato. And he'd given up his entire life for it. And that's why the Silver Blizzard City was able to reach its current scale. It can be said that the Silver Blizzard City was able to reach its current state because of the old City Lord. Can you deny this, Xiao Xingyun? Why can't your Xiao family speak with your conscience? Is it fun to confuse black and white? The third elder, Han Feiyun, burst into wild laughter. His face was full of disdain. The Han family has dealt with the aftermath of the Xiao family for hundreds of years. How many times have we erased our conscience? And it's all because of that promise. That promise has been suppressing the Han family for hundreds of years. What grievances do you have? He had already shed all pretense of cordiality. So, he might as well speak openly. Nonsense. The Silver Blizzard City had belonged to the Han family at that time. How could he not have risked his life? That was his own foundation. He had swindled and stolen it back. Ha, the Shao family's property had become the Han family's. And you're still talking about it in such a dignified manner. And you're even talking about life and death. Isn't it a matter of life and death after the Han family had taken over the Silver Blizzard City as well? Why is it that only the Han family can pass through the same amount of power? Shao Xingyun roared in anger. Don't tell me that the Silver Blizzard City's strength wouldn't be the same if the Shao family had taken over the City Lord's position? Would their strength weaken? What kind of bullshit logic is this? According to what you're saying, the Han family wouldn't have contributed to the Silver Blizzard City's survival if the Han family hadn't taken over the City Lord's position, right? Shao Xingyun snorted and said, That's a disgraceful argument. You're just using your own despicable actions as an excuse for righteousness. You're twisting words and forcing logic. Don't think too much of it. What's shameless? Your Han family is the crown of shamelessness. You're twisting words and forcing logic. The third elder Han Fei Yun's eyes turned red with anger. His fingers trembled. The courage of a leader of a force is directly related to the life and death of that force. Don't you understand such a simple truth? The Shao family's descendants were weak and young at that time. So, how could they have had the ability to support the Silver Blizzard City? How could they have been compared to the great talent and bold vision of the old City Lord? You're simply trying to pin a crime on me. So, there's no need to worry about excuses. In the end, don't you just want the power of the Silver Blizzard City? Is it necessary to implicate the ancestors in your selfish struggle for power? Don't you think that you're too despicable? Shao Xingyun sneered indifferently. Don't talk nonsense, Han Fei Yun. You don't need to waste time. Do you know why this old man is wasting his breath on you? It's because no one from the Han family will come to the Silver Blizzard City. In fact, I believe that no one will pass through this place within a month or two. Therefore, this old man is very relieved. Ha, I've kept these words in my heart for so many years. But this old man is finally saying them in broad daylight. How delightful! This old man firmly believes that one day, I will be able to say these words to the people of the world in a dignified manner. And I'll be able to convince the world. Shao Xingyun roared the last sentence. Then, he looked into the void with an exceptionally sentimental expression. His voice was low and melancholic as he said, My second brother and I have been planning this for our entire lives. Now, the dawn of hope is right in front of us. But he won't be able to see it. He'll never be able to see it. My second brother, he won't be able to see it, he roared again. His body slightly trembled, and tears appeared in his eyes. The Shao family had been together since childhood, and they had never been separated in their entire lives. But one of their wings had suddenly been broken at the time when both of them were old. The pain in Shao Xingyun's heart was difficult to describe. Therefore, he hated the Han family even more. Especially these people in front of him. Shao Buyu only has himself to blame. And Shao Han has brought about his own destruction. What does this have to do with the Silver Blizzard City and us? Don't tell me that you want to put the blame on us? Ridiculous. Han Fei Yun's old hands secretly pressed on the hilt of his sword. His eyes were sharp as he said, Shao Xingyun, you're traitors now. You're traitors of the Silver Blizzard City. He unsheathed his sword with a schwa sound. The sword flashed, and a piece of cloth fell to the ground. Chapter 453. Second chapter. I'm still missing 1,000 words. I'll complete them tomorrow. Ha, good. Cut off all ties, cut off all ties. Shao Xingyun laughed 3 times. His eyes flickered, and the murderous look in his eyes became more and more intense. He suddenly waved his hand and shouted, "Men, kill these traitors as soon as possible. Don't leave them alive. Kill them without mercy." The white-robed swordsman behind him rushed forward with a loud bang. Han Fei Yun's body floated backwards after he had cut off his ties with Mu Shuetong. He then whispered, "The situation is dangerous. I'm afraid that there's a traitor among the 7 swordsmen. The odds are against us. You must protect the little princess. Then, look for an opportunity to break out of the encirclement. The Silver Blizzard City is close at hand, but it's out of reach. So, you must turn around at full speed, and return to the Tianxiang City to look for Jun Wui and Jun Moxie. They're the only ones who can truly help us now. We'll try our best to hold them off for a while. Remember, this matter concerns the future of the little princess and the Silver Blizzard City. So we mustn't fail." By the time he finished speaking, the silver-clothed swordsmen had already surrounded him. Each and every one of them had a gloomy expression on their faces. Their gazes were ferocious as they mercilessly drew their swords at the few elders whom they had met day and night. Xiao Xingyun whistled, and 5 white-bearded old men took the lead. Their swords split into 2 colors, and shot forward like a flood dragon. Shen Xian is a grade 2 snow swordsman. The 3rd elder, Han Fei Yun, blurted out in surprise. These were the 5 gifted experts of the Silver Blizzard City. These 5 people had suffered chi deviation at the same time due to an accident. However, the 5 of them were extremely tenacious, and they had actually taken a different path. With the help of a strange and evil Xian Qi, they had forcibly opened up a new meridian route to circulate the Xian Qi in their bodies. Their meridians had been blocked because of the cultivation deviation, but they had suddenly become unobstructed on the day of their success. Therefore, each of these 5 people had the strength of a grade 2 snow swordsman like Shen Xian. However, each of them had the strength of a grade 2 snow swordsman like Shen Xian. Furthermore, it had the strange ability of being cold and hot at the same time. However, 15 years ago, in order to make up for the flaws in their cultivation method, the 5 of them traveled to the distant desert. Since then, there had been no news of them. Everyone in the Silver City had thought that these 5 people had met with misfortune and were buried in the yellow sand. They hadn't expected that they would unexpectedly appear here. Why? The 3rd elder was shocked. He quickly jumped back, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. "Why are you here? Didn't you die in the Gobi Desert 15 years ago?" The 5 of them were expressionless, as if they didn't know who the person in front of them was. Their long swords formed a colorful sword net, and with a biting cold killing intent, they came crashing down. The 7 swords of the Silver City roared at the same time. Then, their swords interweaved to form a brilliant net of swords. He wanted to give the 3rd elder some time to make arrangements. The 5th elder's white beard fluttered in the wind. His long sword was like a dragon as it flew towards Xiao Xingyun, the elder brother whom he had always revered. Although the sword light was venomous, there were tears in his eyes. Xiao Xingyun's eyes were filled with a cruel and venomous look. He suddenly drew his sword, and the sword light rose sharply. A cold light radiated in all directions as he mercilessly attacked with all his strength. Xiao Xingyun had brought a large number of people with him this time. In fact, there were nearly 100 of them. Moreover, most of them were Earth Xian and Tian Xian senior swordsmen. There were also himself and the double-colored snow swordsman, the 6 Shen Xian experts. It was clear that they wanted to kill the 3rd elder and his team. On the other hand, the 3rd elder had traveled a long distance in order to return to the Silver City as soon as possible. So, he and the 5th elder were the only 2 Shen Xian experts who could still put up a fight. The might of the 7 swords of the Silver City's sword formation was extremely impressive. In fact, it would have been able to resist the 5 swordsmen of the Shen Xian experts if they were to face them. However, The enemy's numbers were simply too many. In fact, they were drowned in a tide of people in the blink of an eye. Mu Xuetong held his long sword in one hand, and Han Yenmeng in the other. He was concentrating on dealing with the enemy's attacks. He was trying to find even the slightest gap. Everyone's lives weren't important at the moment. The safety of the Silver City was the most important. The Silver City would know the truth as long as he and Han Yenmeng could break out of this place. The Shao family's conspiracy couldn't succeed. Mu Xuetong also believed that he was the best candidate to escape with the little princess. The third elder would certainly be more confident in breaking out of the encirclement with the little princess. However, he wouldn't be able to stop the enemy's pursuit. Moreover, Shao Xingyun was bound to keep a close eye on the third elder. So, the third elder wouldn't be able to escape far even if he were to take advantage of the opportunity to break out of the encirclement. Therefore, the only option left was to sacrifice the strongest person in the team in order to buy as much time as possible. Then, he would be able to escape with the little princess. However, this wasn't the time for pleasantries. Therefore, Mu Xuetong immediately understood the meaning of the third elder's words. Han Yenmeng looked around at the people who were engaged in a life-and-death struggle. She was extremely sad in her heart. Every face here was familiar to her. Everyone here had treated her like a precious jewel. They had hugged and kissed her when she was a child. In fact, everyone here could be said to be her family. However, one of her two groups of family members had betrayed her. Moreover, they were engaged in a life-and-death struggle with the people who were protecting her. We were born of the same root. So, why are we so anxious to kill each other? Tears welled up in Han Yenmeng's eyes. She didn't know why this was happening in her pure heart. She only knew that the sky had changed. The third elder steeled his heart as he slowly retreated. The fifth elder and the 7 swords of the Silver City had gradually taken on the majority of the battle. However, the third elder's entire body suddenly emitted a fierce sword light. It seemed as if the sun had suddenly risen to the sky in the middle of a pitch-black night. 10,000 sword lights poured down like the Milky Way. The third elder had used his full strength in this sword attack. It was a fight of life and death. Mu Xuetong didn't utter a word. He rushed forward with Han Yenmeng. He rushed towards the direction that the third elder's sword light had pointed towards. Shao Xingyun felt that something was amiss. He roared, "Stop them! Capture that little slut!" Then, he turned to the other side and roared, "Attack!" As soon as these words were spoken, the situation on the battlefield suddenly changed. The last of the 7 swords of the Silver City suddenly changed the direction of his sword light, and stabbed at his subordinates. They had lived together for many years. A few blood-curdling screams resounded. 3 of the 7 swords of the Silver City stared in disbelief. Blood spurted out of their chests as they slowly turned around to look at their youngest brother. Their eyes were filled with grief, anger, and confusion. That man's eyes exposed a look of guilt. His expression was complicated as he whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm a member of the Shao family." The 3 of them revealed a look of understanding in their eyes. Then, they calmly fell to the ground. There wasn't the slightest trace of resentment on their faces even at the moment of their death. Perhaps they still regarded him as their own brother, even in death. The last expression in the eyes of the 3 was one of boundless pain. "Ah!" The third elder roared as he saw the situation change. He had already guessed that such an unforeseen event would happen, but he still couldn't bear it. He crazily spouted blood from his mouth. His white beard was covered with speckles of blood. Suddenly, he swung his sword to the left and to the right. 2 perfectly round sword lights suddenly shot out. Several people cried out in alarm as their blood splashed everywhere. 2 of them couldn't dodge in time, and were chopped in half at the waist. The third elder, Han Fei-yun, roared. His body was wrapped in sword light as he rushed out like a whirlwind with Mu Xuetong and Han Yenmeng in tow. Then, Han Fei-yun turned around as soon as he got out of the encirclement, and shielded Mu Shui-tong and Han Yenmeng behind him. It seemed as if he could hold off 10,000 enemies by himself. Then, he roared, "Who dares to come up? Fight me to the death!" Mu Shui-tong dragged Han Yenmeng behind him. He didn't even turn his head as he fled into the distance like a wisp of smoke. Han Yenmeng's delicate and anxious voice was heard from afar, "Third grandfather," but the third elder couldn't hear her at this moment. His eyes were firmly fixed on the youngest of the 7 swords of the Silver City. His eyes were filled with hatred, as if he wanted to eat him alive. This villain who had killed his own brother would have been sliced into pieces 10,000 times by now if looks could hurt people. Why? The third elder's body trembled. His eyes were sparkling with tears. But he still had the innocence of a child. He slowly stepped forward. "Why? Wan Ching Guang, why did you do this? The old city lord brought you back to the Silver City out of kindness when you fainted under the snow-capped mountain. He nurtured you with great care, and even made you one of the 7 swords. So, why did you do this?" This 100-year-old old man had been stimulated to the point of shedding tears in the past few days. It could be seen how severe these successive blows had been. The third elder couldn't bear it even though he had cultivated his mind for nearly 100 years. Wan Qingguang's face turned pale under the third elder's contemptuous gaze. He couldn't help but take a step back. His eyes were filled with guilt as he muttered, I didn't want to do this. Third brother, I'm actually a member of the Xiao family. My name is Xiao Jianguang. What happened back then was... Ha ha! Han Fei-yun, haven't you been wondering how I got this information? You should understand now, right? Ha ha! This is one of the most important hidden pawns of our Xiao family. And our Xiao family doesn't only have one hidden pawn. Han Fei-yun, your Han family is done for. Quickly get out of the way. I'll leave your corpse intact on account of our past friendship. Ha ha ha. Xiao Xingyun, do you think that's possible? The third elder had chosen the narrowest place in the valley. 1 man and 1 sword were coldly facing each other. It was obvious that he had made up his mind to die. Kill. Kill as quickly as possible. We must capture those 2 who escape. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. Xiao Xingyun waved his hand. His face was full of murderous intentions. The 3 remaining members of the 7 swords and the 5th elder were covered in blood. They fell from the sky and staggered to stand side by side with the 3rd elder. Their gazes were resolute and cold. They didn't look at that traitor anymore. He's not worth looking at. The crowd swarmed forward. The 3rd elder roared, "Stop them with all your might. Don't let them cross the line." The 4 of them agreed at the same time. Their gazes were resolute. They brandished their swords as bright as snow, and the sky was filled with bloody light. They were doomed to die today. But they wouldn't sacrifice themselves lightly. They would fight for the little princess as long as they had a breath left in them. The more time they had, the more hope they had. For the future of the Silver City. For the future of the Silver City. Both sides clashed like a whirlwind. The blood slowly dyed the ground like plum blossoms. Then, it gradually gathered into a ball. Then, it slowly converged into a small stream. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.